An old man stands before a colossal beast, trying to recall a spell. But the words for the fire magic just won't come to him. He looks out over his quiet home, realizing the time has finally arrived. With grim determination, he decides to begin preparing for his end. His first task is to sort through the mountain of weapons he's collected. A vast and dangerous arsenal gathered over many long years. He figures he'll start by getting rid of the unnecessary things. Like the head of the evil Dragon King, which still occasionally breathes fire. Or his collection of cursed blades, humming with a dark collective energy. And a forbidden grimoire so dangerous that not a single page has ever been read. He admits his collection is a bit much, but that's exactly why he can't just throw it all away. He's been drawn to the forbidden and the cursed ever since he was a child. He even remembers discussing his strange hobby with the Demon King himself, right in the middle of their battle. It was a secret he could never share with his own party. To them, the only weapon worth admiring was the hero's legendary blade. A sword that frankly never really resonated with him. As night falls over his secluded home, he continues his grim task. Inside, the severed head of the Dragon King rests uneasily. Its eye suddenly snaps open, sensing a presence. Outside, two cloaked figures watch the home, remarking on how even heroes must eventually grow old and weak. One of the figures turns to his partner, a man named Wilhelm, and tells him to handle the dragon. Wilhelm, a being with a strange metallic visage, silently agrees. The other declares that he will be the one to deal with the hero himself. Inside, the old man is still lost in thought, wondering how to dispose of his dangerous collection. He considers using them one last time against a powerful enemy to drain their power. After all, these are cursed relics that can't be left unattended. Suddenly, his front door is blasted clean off its hinges. The old hero can only stare in disbelief. A chilling voice echoes through the room, calling him by his name, Aslan. And standing in the doorway is a colossal, armored skeleton, confirming its arrival. The skeletal knight introduces himself as Wilmonte, the Skeleton King. Aslan simply lets out a weary sigh, completely unfazed. The Skeleton King rages that because Aslan destroyed the Demon King's army. His own life plan for a quiet retirement has been utterly ruined. He screams that his future is now filled with despair and he will never forgive him. First, he'll take the hero's head and make him feel that same hopelessness. With a furious lunge, he swings a massive fist down at Aslan. But the attack is met with a sudden bone-shattering impact. Wilmonte looks down, surprised to have taken a direct hit. He scoffs, remarking on how weak the hero's punch felt. But his words are cut short as his skull begins to crack and shatter. The force of the blow sends the Skeleton King flying out of the house, carving a massive trench in the earth before finally coming to a stop. Lying in the dust, Wilmonte struggles to comprehend what just happened. He desperately calls out for his partner Wilhelm, screaming for help. But elsewhere, Wilhelm has his own problems to deal with. The Dragon King's head has clamped down hard on his metallic skull. Wilmonte can only stare in utter disbelief at this impossible outcome. He looks up to see the old hero standing over him, completely unharmed. Aslan simply stands there, a silent and imposing figure. Aslan's gaze hardens with a sudden realization. He understands that a monster who wants to destroy humanity can't be left to roam free. But Wilmonte scoffs, asking if the hero truly believes he's one, for he is the king of the undead. He declares that as long as the darkness of night remains, his body will simply reform from any damage it takes. He boasts that no matter the attack, he will always revive. He then taunts Aslan, questioning if his old body can keep up with an endless battle. To his surprise, Aslan simply smiles, saying that's wonderful news. He explains that he was looking for a way to use his cursed weapons until they broke. The Skeleton King can only stare back in utter confusion. 10 hours pass under the relentless sun. Aslan examines one of his blades, noting with frustration that it's still perfectly sharp. On the ground, Wilmonte's shattered skull can only groan in agreement. The old hero then asks if the Demon King was the one who sent him. But the Skeleton King scoffs at the very mention of that name. He reveals the Demon King is a coward who betrayed humanity and brought ruin to their culture. This unexpected information leaves Aslan completely stunned. He wonders aloud if the Demon King he once knew has truly changed so much. Wilmonte's skull begins to reform as he screams that it's all Aslan's fault. He accuses the hero of a cunning plot to demoralize the demon race by sparing their king. Aslan's mind drifts back, focusing on the demon king. He remembers his past, surrounded by companions and cheered on by the masses. But even then, a profound sense of isolation always lingered. It was the heavy burden of being the hero, a weight he could never truly share. The only one who seemed to understand was the demon king himself. He asks Will Monte where the demon king is now, and learns he's been hiding himself away. The skeleton king reveals the demon king was tricked by humans and is now being held captive. He's being slowly killed, pierced by a collection of cursed weapons. Aslan can only listen in stunned silence. A new resolve forms in his eyes. He wants to see the demon king one last time. With his new mission clear, Aslan knows he can't stay here. He starts looking around for something he'll need for the journey. Rummaging through an old chest, he finds exactly what he was looking for. It's a notebook he prepared for the day he would begin his final preparations. A personal checklist for the end of his life. He packs his cursed arsenal into a magical container, ready for travel. Turning to an old friend, he declares this will be their last job together. The great dragon seems concerned, questioning if Aslan is truly fit to fly after his recent battle. But Aslan simply opens his notebook, his resolve unshaken. His to-do list is clear, with one goal now at the very top: to reconcile with the Demon King. And so, Aslan embarks on the final journey of his life. His first destination is the town of Beginnings, a place he knows all too well. It's a remote village nestled in the mountains, a proving ground for new adventurers. His dragon companion agrees this is the best place to start gathering information. Aslan looks forward to speaking with the younger generation of heroes. As they fly, he spots a familiar building on the horizon. But to his dismay, he realizes it's his very own home. He and his dragon have somehow managed to fly in a complete circle. The old hero can only look on in exhausted disbelief. He struggles to remember the route, realizing he's completely lost. And so, after that embarrassing detour, Aslan is forced to confront the harsh reality of his failing memory. The shock of his own senility is almost too much for the old hero to bear. But his moment of self-pity is interrupted by a sudden commotion nearby. A young adventurer grits their teeth, caught in a desperate situation. They curse their luck, having encountered a powerful monster before even reaching the town of Beginnings. Before them stands a massive cyclops, a threat they were completely unprepared for. The beast roars, demanding to know if they've seen the legendary hero said to live in these parts. It presses its interrogation, convinced the hero must be hiding somewhere close. The adventurer realizes with a start that the rumors of a reclusive hero might actually be true. The Cyclops' attention shifts, its gaze turning predatory as it inspects its captive. It pins the young adventurer down, intent on a cruel and vicious act. In their final moments of terror, the adventurer can only think to call for help. But that call is answered by a fist that smashes directly into the monster's face. The adventurer can only stare, completely stunned by the sudden intervention. With a heavy thud, the Cyclops' massive body collapses to the ground. The adventurer struggles to comprehend how it was defeated with a single bare-handed punch. They try to rationalize it as some kind of powerful magic, the only logical explanation. Aslan, however, is more concerned with why such a high-level monster was in this region at all. He finally turns, surprised to see the very person he just saved standing right there. The adventurer looks away, flustered, insisting they never asked for help. They tell him not to get the wrong idea, but begrudgingly offer their thanks anyway. Aslan stares in utter shock, a sudden realization dawning on him. He recognizes this behavior as something he's only heard about, a tsundere. He recalls hearing about the tsundere trend in the capital, a personality he never thought he'd witness firsthand. He immediately adds meeting a tsundere to his end-of-life checklist, noting the importance of new experiences. Putting his notebook away, he warns the young lady that it's too dangerous to be in the forest alone. The adventurer insists they're an aspiring hero and can handle it just fine. They then clarify that they're not a lady, but a boy named Tori. The revelation leaves Aslan utterly speechless for the second time. Tori asks if it's really so surprising that he's a boy. But behind him, the Cyclops rises from the dead, a gaping hole in its chest. The young adventurer can only stare in pure terror. Before he can react, a massive hand wraps around him. He can't believe the monster is still alive after taking such a direct hit. The beast gasps for air, clearly wounded but far from defeated. It reveals a one-time revival item, the only thing that saved it from certain death. Tori glances over, seeing Aslan frozen in place and realizes he's now a hostage. The Cyclops begins to crush him, intent on breaking every bone in his body. It sneers, enjoying the sounds of his suffering. But the Cyclops' cruel laughter is cut short by a sudden, sharp pain. It looks down in utter confusion, trying to understand what's happening. The monster screams in disbelief as its entire body is sliced clean in two. Tori is released from its grip, equally baffled by the sudden turn of events. Standing behind the bisected beast is a mysterious, armored woman. Both Aslan and Tori can only stare, wondering who this warrior is. The woman looks directly at Aslan, declaring that she's finally found her lifelong rival. She stands over the fallen monster, her weapon still glowing with power. Her gaze is intense as she tells him not to pretend he's forgotten her. She challenges him to remember the countless days they once spent locked in battle. Tori looks over at the old man, insisting he must have some memory of this woman. But Aslan's face is a mask of pure confusion. He has absolutely no idea who she is. The warrior explains their history goes back decades, as rivals in the same guild who often dueled. A flicker of recognition seems to cross Aslan's face as he agrees that it sounds familiar. She continues, recalling how they eventually grew to respect each other and became friends. Aslan beams with relief, exclaiming that he remembers now and that it's been far too long. But his act falls apart as she accuses him of lying, realizing he doesn't remember her at all. Her gaze hardens as she reminds him that she, too, is a warrior who has survived endless battles. And if words won't make him remember, then she will force him to recall their past through combat. With incredible speed, she closes the distance and lands a powerful strike against the old hero. Aslan's eyes widen in shock as the warrior lunges forward. Her spear moves in a blur, its tip stopping just inches from his face. She unleashes a devastating thrust, a technique honed over a lifetime. Tori screams out a warning, certain the old man is done for. But it's the warrior who is left stunned, baffled by his impossibly fast reaction. With a single hand, Aslan has caught the spear, its energy dissipating around him. The deflected force of the attack erupts behind him, shattering the earth. Tori can only stare as the shockwave tears through the solid rock. He cries out in panic, begging the old man not to die. The armored woman stands in silence, her ultimate attack rendered completely useless. The warrior admits she misjudged him, realizing that even in his old age, the hero is far from weak. She seems to accept her defeat, offering to at least give him a proper burial. But instead of delivering a final blow, Aslan simply bites down on the tip of her spear. The warrior can only stare in absolute dumbfounded shock. Aslan calmly analyzes the weapon's texture, comparing its toughness to minotaur jerky. Enraged by this disrespect, she demands that he let go of her weapon immediately. But the effort proves too much for the old hero, and his dentures pop right out of his mouth. The warrior is left utterly speechless by the sight of the false teeth on the ground. Aslan clutches his mouth, suddenly realizing his embarrassing blunder. Defeated, the warrior collapses, unable to process that her ultimate technique lost to a pair of dentures. Tori rushes to his side, asking if the old man is okay after that embarrassing moment. But Aslan simply boasts that his dentures are made of legendary orichalcum. Suddenly, a thought seems to strike the old hero. The warrior explains that his last attack just now helped her remember something important. She calls him by a name he hasn't heard in a very long time, Julius. Tori tries to place the name, certain he's heard it somewhere before. The warrior's gaze intensifies, glad that he finally seems to recall his past. She reveals her true identity as Julius of the Ruin, one of the Demon King's 6 great generals. Tori is completely floored, remembering the legends of the Demon King's elite commanders. He can't believe it, realizing he's read about this legendary figure in his history books. Julius says that if he truly remembers her, then he must also understand her purpose for being here. The word hero echoes in Tori's mind, leaving him completely stunned. He looks over at the unassuming old man, finally putting the pieces together. He's caught between 2 legendary figures, a confrontation straight out of the history books. The hero versus one of the Demon King's great generals. Tori realizes that a battle between them would be on a scale he couldn't possibly imagine. The thought of being caught in the crossfire sends him into a full-blown panic. But instead of preparing for battle, Aslan simply offers up a massive mug of ale. Tori can only stare, completely lost and confused by this turn of events. Julius explains that she's here to fulfill an old promise they made, to share a drink once the war was finally over. And so, under the light of the full moon, the two old rivals share a long-awaited toast. Aslan's memory is finally jogged, recalling their first battle in this very forest. He remembers how they were both too weak to even land a decisive blow on each other, and how they were later chased off by a much stronger beast. Tori can only listen, finding their shared history a bit strange. He'd expected a battle for the ages, but instead, they seem to be getting along just fine. He realizes that even between enemies, a bond can form on the battlefield. Aslan admits that with every battle, he saw her grow stronger, though he was surprised when she became a great general. Julius returns the sentiment, never imagining he would be the one to defeat the Demon King himself. But the friendly atmosphere quickly fades as Julius's expression turns deadly serious. She points her spear at Aslan, demanding that the hero draw his weapon for a final duel. Tori can only watch in panic, trying to get them to stop. He yells out in confusion, asking why they have to fight after just sharing a peaceful moment. Julius acknowledges Aslan's greatness, a hero who reached the pinnacle of power. But she then asks him to consider her own fate in comparison. She failed to protect her master and was denied a warrior's death, left only with a life of regret. For someone like her, there is only one path to redemption: a final, decisive battle to settle their long history. She declares that to find a proud death, she must first be defeated by the hero himself. Aslan looks hesitant, as if he wants to object to her request. But before he can speak, Julius moves in a blur of motion. She lands the first strike, a shallow cut across the old hero's face. Tori can only stare in shock, realizing she struck without a moment's hesitation. Julius explains that with their final drink shared, she can now die without any regrets. Aslan quietly accepts her unwavering resolve. He draws a blade, agreeing to honor her wish if this is truly her end-of-life preparation. The two old rivals prepare to settle their score once and for all. The sheer force of their impending battle sends a shockwave across the land. Aslan closes his eyes, a somber smile gracing his lips as their final duel begins. Julius's eyes narrow with deadly intent. Tori screams in terror, realizing he'll be killed if he stays. The two warriors clash, their decades-long rivalry finally coming to a head. Julius unleashes a furious flurry of strikes, putting all her strength behind the assault. Aslan seems taken aback by her sheer power. She unleashes a devastating special technique, sending shockwaves tearing through the ground. The old hero grits his teeth, enduring the relentless barrage. But Julius presses her attack, refusing to give him a moment's rest. Tori can only watch, completely stunned by the scale of their power. His shock turns to fear as he realizes the stray attacks are heading right for him. He braces for the inevitable impact, a stray blow from the battle hurtling towards him. But the hit never comes, leaving him to wonder what just happened. He looks up to see the massive form of Aslan's dragon companion shielding him from the blast. The young adventurer can hardly believe it, realizing the great beast just saved his life. Julius watches from a distance, recognizing the creature as a powerful elder dragon whose scales deflected her attack with ease. She finds it strange, knowing that dragons only serve those they acknowledge as truly powerful. But she quickly dismisses the thought, deciding it doesn't matter. Her focus returns to Aslan, demanding to know if he's finally ready to fight for real. The old hero simply looks back, not understanding what she's getting at. She calls him out for feigning ignorance, pointing out that he hasn't even drawn the hero's legendary blade. Aslan sheepishly admits that, to be honest, he just never liked the design of the hero's sword. Julius can't believe it, asking if that's truly the only reason he refuses to use it. Her disbelief quickly turns to pure, unadulterated rage. She explodes with fury, screaming at him not to mock her. The old hero is taken aback by her sudden and violent reaction. She declares that if he won't use the sword for such a pathetic reason, she'll create a situation where he has no other choice. Tori can only cry out a warning as she lunges forward. Julius unleashes a devastating swing of her spear, creating a massive explosion of pure force. The attack carves a deep scar into the very earth itself. The force of the blast sends Aslan skidding across the ground. He realizes with a start that this attack is on another level entirely. He looks down at the cursed blade in his hand. Just as Julius unleashes another devastating technique, closing the distance in an instant. Her spear slams directly into the hilt of his weapon. The impact is so great that the blade shatters into pieces. Aslan can only stare at the broken hilt left in his hand. Julius stands over him, her point seemingly proven. She asks if he will finally draw the hero's sword now that his other weapons are useless. But the old hero can only look away, still hesitant to use the legendary blade. Aslan continues to evade, looking strained by the relentless assault. Julius declares that she will simply corner him until he has no other option. She unleashes another devastating swing, questioning why he won't fight back. The old hero takes the full force of the blow without even flinching. Tori screams from the sidelines, begging the old man to defend himself. But Julius feels a strange sense of unease, as if something is wrong. She knows she should have the advantage, yet the battle feels one-sided in his favor. It's like her attacks are crashing against a massive, unmoving boulder. And then, a horrifying realization finally dawns on her. She looks at the hero, finally understanding his true intention. Aslan looks refreshed, explaining that her powerful attacks have actually loosened up his stiff muscles. Tori and the dragon can only stare, completely bewildered by this turn of events. Julius is equally flabbergasted, unable to comprehend his bizarre reaction. The old hero turns back, his expression suddenly growing serious. He warns her that now that his body is warmed up, she shouldn't force him to get serious. The warrior's eyes widen in disbelief at his sheer confidence. Tori points out that the old man is bleeding from the earlier cut. But Aslan simply dismisses it as a mere scratch, surprised the boy even noticed. He then turns to Julius, reiterating that he truly just doesn't like the hero's sword. She holds up a strange device, declaring that to show respect for his true strength. She will use a special item to power up her own weapon instead. Julius declares that she's been waiting for him to finally get serious. And if he won't, then she has no choice but to answer with the full extent of her own power. She begins to channel every last drop of her magical energy into her spear. The weapon transforms, glowing with an immense and otherworldly aura. Tori recognizes the pressure, realizing her spear now rivals the legendary hero's sword itself. Julius recalls that when they first met, they were equals on the battlefield. But with every subsequent encounter, a harsh reality began to set in. She became painfully aware of the ever-widening gap between their strength. She even remembers him showing mercy, refusing to take the life of a warrior who couldn't fight back. She screams that her pride as a warrior was shattered that day. But now, thanks to him, she finally has a chance to reclaim it. Her eyes burn with a renewed sense of purpose. Aslan's hand tightens around the hilt of a new blade. He smiles, saying he should be the one thanking her. He never thought he'd get to use this much power in his old body again. Julius understands that one can only know their limits by fighting the strong. But she declares that their battle is not yet over. With a furious cry, she lunges forward for another assault. And this time, Aslan meets her attack head-on. But even after that final clash, Julius refuses to stay down. She grits her teeth, her eyes blazing with an unyielding spirit. Bloodied and broken, she pushes herself past every physical limit. She screams that this isn't over, that she will one day surpass him. A strange power emanates from her eye as she calls out the hero's name. But Aslan's final, decisive move has already been made. He looks down at his fallen rival, acknowledging her incredible effort. The tip of her empowered spear shatters, falling uselessly to the ground. Aslan tells her that it was a magnificent battle, a worthy end to their rivalry. With a faint smile, Julius seems to finally find peace in her defeat. Tori can only watch in wide-eyed horror. The final blow lands, a clean and fatal strike. He admits it was an incredible battle, the likes of which he's never seen. But his awe quickly turns to anger and confusion. He turns to the old hero, calling out his name. Tori demands to know why Aslan had to kill her. He can't understand how he could end the life of someone he just shared a drink with. The wound looks fatal, a seemingly mortal blow. Aslan simply looks down, as if disagreeing with the outcome. But Julius looks up, revealing she's still alive and asking where she was even hit. Aslan clarifies that he never aimed for a vital spot in the first place. She pats her side, completely unharmed and demanding to know what just happened. Tori can only stare, baffled that the warrior is still standing after that final blow. But the warrior's body suddenly melts into a small, gelatinous slime. The sight leaves Tori completely speechless and horrified. Aslan calmly holds up the creature, explaining that this is, in fact, Julius. Tori points to her fallen body, unable to believe what he's hearing. The slime then begins to reform into a more familiar, yet still gooey, shape. He can't bring himself to look, questioning what kind of creature she even is. Aslan reveals her true nature. She's not human but a member of the slime race. Tori is still trying to process the story of their first meeting. He questions how their legendary rivalry could have started in this very forest. Aslan confirms it, recalling how his first opponent was a simple slime. Slimes are known as the weakest of monsters, with virtually no potential for growth. Tori realizes how incredibly rare it is for a slime to even achieve a human form. He can't imagine the sheer effort it took for one to become a great general. Aslan reflects on his own path, from a young adventurer to the hero who defeated the Demon King. Julius, in her true form, seems a bit embarrassed by her humble beginnings. The story gives Tori a surge of hope, believing he too can grow stronger on his journey. Aslan, with the small slime perched on his shoulder, gets both of their attention. He then eagerly asks if he can join them on their journey. But their conversation is cut short by a figure descending from the sky, leaving both Aslan and Tori completely caught off guard. Before them stands a bizarre figure with the head of a chicken, dressed in a fine suit. Tori can only scream in utter disbelief at the sight of a flying chicken man. The creature takes offense, demanding to know who they're calling a chicken. He declares that he is no mere fowl but a legendary phoenix. But his grand declaration is immediately undermined by an instinctive bird-like pose. Tori can't help but point out that he just made a clucking sound. He begins to suspect this newcomer must be an acquaintance of Julius, given the absurdity of it all. Aslan looks down at the slime on his shoulder, wondering what's happening. His expression darkens as he realizes this new arrival could mean trouble. Julius the slime seems furious, unable to believe this person has shown up now. The chicken-headed man apologizes for his late arrival. He introduces himself as Cockatrice of the Undying Bird, another of the Demon King's 6 great generals. Tori is completely stunned to learn he's in the presence of yet another legendary commander. Cockatrice explains he came to take the hero's life, but seeing him exhausted from fighting Julius, he feels it would be an unworthy victory. Julius warns Tori that this new general is on a completely different level than she is. Tori struggles to understand, recalling that Aslan only gave Julius a minor scratch. But he looks to the old hero with confidence, certain that the man who defeated the Demon King can't possibly lose. But Aslan looks completely spent, admitting he's in no condition to fight right now. He explains that letting Julius hit him earlier to loosen his stiff body has now resulted in a crippling wave of backlash pain. Cockatrice takes advantage of the opening, summoning an ancient and powerful spirit. The massive entity materializes, ready to overwhelm the exhausted hero. But Aslan's dragon companion intercepts the attack, biting down on the summoned beast. Seeing the hero's familiar in trouble, Julius decides she has no choice but to intervene. As the dragon struggles against the powerful summon, a new warrior enters the fray. Julius reforms into a younger version of her human self, barely able to maintain a combat form. Tori can only scream in disbelief, realizing 2 of the Demon King's generals are about to fight each other. Julius declares that while she owes the Demon King a great debt, she no longer serves him. Cockatrice questions her timing, wondering why she's so focused on the hero now. He then dismisses her entirely, stating he has no interest in her personal affairs. He explains that with the Demon King gone, their society has fallen into chaos and needs a new leader. Julius's eyes widen, realizing his plan is to take the hero's head as proof of his own strength. The chicken-headed general's unsettling gaze confirms her suspicions. Elsewhere, Aslan's dragon companion continues to struggle against the powerful sun. Tori watches in horror, realizing that at this rate, everyone is going to be defeated. He feels a crushing sense of helplessness, knowing he's just a new adventurer with no power to help. But that despair quickly hardens into a look of fierce determination. He refuses to stand by, telling himself he's just making excuses for his own weakness. With a defiant cry, he tries to draw the general's attention to himself. He believes that even he can create a momentary opening for the others to exploit. Cockatrice looks over, completely caught off guard by the boy's reckless move. In an instant, the general has Tori firmly in his grasp. The young adventurer realizes he's made a grave mistake, remembering his earlier insult. Cockatrice explains that while he doesn't enjoy tormenting the weak, he's been disrespected twice now. And for that, he delivers a swift and brutal punishment. Tori is sent flying, crashing hard against the ground. Both Aslan and Julius can only watch in stunned silence. With the boy dealt with, Cockatrice considers the rude interruption over. He turns his gaze back to his true target, the hero. But Julius suddenly looks up in shock, sensing a new presence. Aslan recognizes it too, a nostalgic and powerful magic he hasn't felt in years. Cockatrice turns in fury, demanding to know who dares to challenge him. He immediately begins to cast a powerful ancient spell, unleashing a devastating pillar of fire to incinerate this new foe. But from the flames emerges a horned figure, speaking in an unknown tongue. Cockatrice can only stare in disbelief as his ultimate attack proves completely ineffective. And in the next instant, the general's body is pierced by an unseen force, leaving him utterly defenseless. Cockatrice struggles to understand what's happening, feeling his body being manipulated against his will. Even as a master of ancient magic, he can't comprehend the force now tearing him apart. He realizes this must be some unknown form of magic, wielded by the mysterious horned figure. A sudden, horrifying realization dawns on him as he recognizes the immense magical power. He tries to deny it, refusing to believe what his senses are telling him. Tori can only stare in wide-eyed shock at the sudden turn of events. He clutches his head, his memory of the last few moments feeling strangely hazy. He looks around at the devastated landscape, trying to piece together what just happened. Even Aslan's dragon companion seems completely bewildered by the scene. Tori bows deeply, offering a frantic apology to both of them for his reckless actions. Aslan and Tori stand beside the mysterious horned figure, all of them taking in the aftermath. The horned stranger admits their own reckless actions caused a lot of trouble. Tori then realizes his wounds have been healed and apologizes for being a burden. But Aslan simply turns to the young adventurer, calling him by name. He then makes an unexpected offer, asking Tori if he will become his disciple. The boy can only stare back, completely caught off guard by the proposal. He stammers that it's not that he doesn't want to accept the honor, but he insists that he's still too inexperienced and would only hold the hero back. Aslan just smiles, telling him that's perfectly fine. His simple acceptance leaves the young adventurer utterly speechless. Tori insists that he's just a beginner, a burden who would only slow them down. But Aslan explains that he saw a glimmer of true courage in the boy's reckless charge. He asks him one last time if he will accept his offer. The young adventurer is overcome with emotion, his face contorted with gratitude. Through tears, he bows his head and formally accepts the hero's tutelage. He even turns to the great dragon, promising to do his best on their journey together. The horned stranger remarks on the hero's impressive insight. They wonder if Aslan's true goal is to control the immense, untapped power sleeping within the boy. But Aslan simply says he was moved by Tori's spirit, an answer the stranger finds almost too simple. The horned figure knows that if others learn of Tori's power, it will surely lead to trouble. The horned stranger looks down in annoyance as Aslan simply falls asleep on the ground. Tori asks what happened to Cockatrice, wondering if the general will simply revive. Sometime later, the group finally arrives at the town of beginnings. It's a place called Ars, a bustling hub for new adventurers. The streets are teeming with warriors and mages, all looking to make a name for themselves. But Tori's attention is suddenly drawn to something in the town square. He sees two massive statues of legendary heroes standing guard. As he and the others approach, he begins to recognize the figures. He realizes with a start that one of them is a statue of a young Aslan, alongside another hero named Ragvald. A local explains that Ragvald was a hero who protected this region and was granted his title by the king himself. Tori excitedly shows the horned stranger a pamphlet with more information. Aslan looks up, surprised to hear that his own statue is in the town square. The horned stranger teases Tori, who seems to be laughing off something the old man said. Even the dragon companion looks concerned, offering to help Aslan with his aching back. The horned stranger points out the statues, but Tori complains that he can't see them clearly. Aslan simply puts on a pair of glasses, asking if that helps his young disciple. Tori then begins to nag the old hero about taking his medicine, much to Aslan's annoyance. The horned stranger watches this domestic scene, finding their old rival's retirement more lively than they'd imagined. But the mood is quickly ruined when Aslan complains about his weak bladder, prompting Tori to ask if he needs a diaper. Tori tries to console the dejected hero, explaining to Julius that this is just the harsh reality of growing old. The horned stranger questions Tori's casual attitude, but the boy explains he's used to caring for the elderly. Aslan looks up at the statue of his old friend Ragvald, lost in a wave of nostalgia. He recalls the man's gentle nature, then absent-mindedly asks the statue if it remembers him. The horned stranger reminds him that he and Ragvald were supposed to have built a villa together nearby. The mention of a secret villa catches both Tori and the stranger by surprise. Aslan checks his notes, remembering their promise to rest there once the war was over. Tori eagerly asks where they might find this old vacation home. Aslan thinks for a moment, realizing he knows someone in town who might have the answer. Just then, a cloaked figure asks if they're looking for a villa outside the city walls. The figure explains there's only a rundown shack out there, which seems to be exactly what Aslan was looking for. The figure notices the small slime, identifying the person as a monster tamer. The tamer proudly introduces their slimes, calling them their precious partners. The horned stranger finds it unusual for adventurers to cooperate with monsters, noting that such partnerships are still rare. But the tamer explains that the war taught them that trust is more important than race. The stranger reflects on how much the world has changed, then warns them not to go outside the city walls. They reveal that a new and incredibly dangerous dungeon has suddenly appeared. The word dungeon catches both Aslan and Tori completely by surprise. Their conversation is interrupted by a sudden commotion in the street. A troop of heavily armored soldiers marches past them with grim purpose. The tamer explains they were dispatched from the capital to deal with the high-level threat. The soldiers' imposing helmets fill the frame, a symbol of the capital's authority. Leading them is a woman in ornate armor, who identifies her unit as the Royal Knights. They carry grim trophies from their campaign, the severed heads of monsters impaled on pikes. Tori and the tamer can only look on in horror at the brutal display. The tamer explains that the Royal Knights are infamous for their cruel treatment of monsters. But the townspeople seem to disagree, cheering and celebrating their arrival. The commander offers a gracious smile, thanking the crowd for their warm welcome. She addresses the masses, introducing herself as Lumiel, captain of the knights, and boasting of their many victories. She promises to wipe out every last threat and usher in an age of absolute safety. But a close-up of her eye reveals a cold, calculating gaze that betrays her heroic words. The tamer holds up their slime, refusing to back down from the knights. But Lumiel suddenly appears before them, her smile laced with contempt. The tamer is stunned, having not even seen her move. The knight captain scolds them for carrying such a filthy creature on their shoulder. And with a flick of her finger, she sends the small slime flying to the ground. The tamer can only look on in pure, unadulterated rage. Lumiel's expression darkens as she stares down at the terrified creature. The slime trembles, sensing that the woman before it is no human but a demon. The tamer admits they'd heard of monster tamers, but seeing this bond has changed their perspective. But Lumiel simply scoffs, asking if they've already forgotten the horrors of the last war. She holds the trembling creature, calling all monsters lowly beings, and declares that every last one of them deserves to be destroyed. The tamer can only scream in fury at her cruelty. They lunge forward to attack, but Lumiel stops them with a single hand. The tamer rushes to their fallen companion, asking if it's all right. Their gaze then shifts back to the knight captain, filled with pure hatred. But Lumiel only smiles, mocking them for protecting a monster in this backwater town. Before she can strike, however, her blade is blocked by a mysterious, bandaged figure. Julius watches in a panic, realizing this commotion could expose her true identity. Tori looks around in confusion, suddenly realizing that Aslan is nowhere to be seen. The bandaged figure declares that Lumiel is the one who is truly filthy. And with a sudden lunge, they slam their head directly into the knight captain's. But the tense moment is suddenly shattered by Aslan, who wanders over asking if his lunch is ready yet. Lumiel can only stare, her expression shifting to one of pure dumbfounded rage. The bandaged stranger seems equally baffled by the old hero's bizarre timing. Aslan then spots the tamer's slime on the ground, believing he's finally found his meal. The small creature cries out in terror, realizing the hero thinks it's his lunch. He casually picks up the slime, telling the horrified tamer that he's suddenly craving a slime hot pot. The onlookers are completely bewildered, murmuring about the strange old man in their midst. Shielding the slime, the tamer seems to ask if Aslan is offering to take care of the knight captain for them. Lumiel scoffs at the very idea, saying she would never eat something so filthy. She declares that out of generosity, she'll let this incident slide and walks away. Aslan watches her go, his foolish demeanor completely gone. The tamer turns to him, demanding to know why he'd joke about eating their slime. They stare in disbelief, asking if his senile act was all just a performance. Aslan explains he was just looking for a way to defuse the situation and saw the perfect opening. The tamer looks on, still questioning why he didn't just fight her. But Aslan reminds them that she's the captain of the Royal Knights, and a fight would cause a massive incident. Tori agrees, adding that a public brawl is the last thing they need right now. He looks at the old hero with newfound respect, realizing the entire act was a brilliant strategic move. Aslan then turns to the bandaged figure, asking if the slime hot pot is ready yet. Tori can only stare, finally realizing the old man's senile act was just a ruse. The tamer offers a sincere thanks, telling the old hero to be careful. With the situation resolved, the group waves goodbye, ready to find the old villa. The horned stranger suggests they can investigate the dungeon and the knights from there. And so they venture into the woods just outside the city walls. Aslan suddenly stops, a flicker of recognition crossing his face. He confidently declares that he remembers the way to their destination. He points to a familiar window, certain this is the right path. But the horned stranger seems less than convinced by his sudden confidence. But their path is blocked by a scene of utter chaos, as a massive beast tears a building apart. A colossal, armored warrior stands amidst the destruction, its presence overwhelming. Tori can only watch in horror as soldiers are sent flying through the air. He recognizes the knight captain, Lumiel, ordering her troops to fall back. She realizes with a start that the royal knights are fighting the very dungeon they came to investigate. But a sudden horrifying thought seems to strike the young adventurer. He turns to Aslan, realizing that if the villa is nearby, then the building being destroyed is none other than their destination. The massive beast turns its attention to Lumiel, ready to strike. But the knight captain simply smiles, preparing to enchant her weapon with magic. She unleashes a devastating lightning attack, her blade crackling with immense power. With a confident smirk, she swings her enchanted sword at the colossal beast. The strike lands with incredible force, tearing a massive fissure in the earth. Aslan sees an opening, telling the bandaged stranger that now is their chance to move. He wants to investigate the ruins of his villa and find out what caused all this destruction. Tori can only ask what that armored giant is, but Aslan has no idea. As the dust from the attack begins to settle, the armored beast lets out a low groan, still standing. It stands completely unharmed, questioning why its opponent has stopped moving. But Lumiel explains that the true power of her attack isn't the impact, but the paralysis it inflicts. She explains that her goal is to finish off her opponent while they're unable to resist. Her blade moves in for the final, decisive strike. The beast's armor begins to crack under the immense pressure. Lumiel mocks the creature, asking if it's trembling in fear. But its helmet suddenly shatters, revealing a dark energy with a powerful beam of light erupts from its single eye. The knight captain can only stare in shock, screaming for her troops to retreat. The devastating blast tears through the battlefield, incinerating everything in its path. And from the dust emerges a new, more menacing figure, its true form revealed. A single, malevolent eye glares from within the shattered armor. Its true form is revealed, a hulking, horned beast of pure shadow. Lumiel simply smirks, identifying the creature as the king of this dungeon. She orders her remaining troops to regroup, preparing to take the fight to its source. The royal knights stand ready to invade, intent on wiping out every last monster. But inside, Aslan and Tori have already slipped past them, staring in awe at the dungeon's interior. Aslan explains that dungeons are formed when a powerful monster's magic warps the very land around it. Tori realizes with a start that the armored giant must be the master of this entire place. Aslan agrees, adding that if the monsters are too aggressive, they'll have to destroy the dungeon's core. Nearby, Julius drinks from a spring, explaining that for a slime, dehydration is a life-or-death matter. The horned stranger makes a rather unsettling observation about the spring water. Tori immediately regrets having even considered taking a drink. But his disgust is cut short by a sudden movement nearby. A small horned creature appears from the shadows, clearly a monster. They look around, realizing they've been completely surrounded without even noticing. A host of bizarre, wide-eyed creatures closes in on them from all sides. Tori can only cry out in alarm at the sudden and overwhelming ambush. But he notices the monsters aren't attacking, simply watching them with curiosity. The horned stranger senses their fear, but feels no actual malice coming from them. The small creature just stands there, its posture almost welcoming. One of the small creatures climbs up a nearby pillar, catching Tori's attention. It then drops down and affectionately rubs against his leg. Tori asks the horned stranger why it's being so friendly, but gets no clear answer. He seems relieved, realizing these creatures aren't as dangerous as he first thought. He picks up the small monster, but the stranger warns him not to get attached, as the dungeon's master will surely come for it. Tori dismisses the warning, noting how docile and warm the creatures are, making the dungeon feel surprisingly safe. The horned stranger seems to think the armored giant won't be so understanding. Tori then notices Julius the slime is trembling and asks what's wrong. He turns to find the colossal dungeon master looming right behind him, its voice echoing through the chamber. The young adventurer can only stare in pure terror, while Aslan looks on, completely unbothered. The dungeon master's voice echoes, questioning their presence in its domain. Both Tori and the horned stranger cower behind the old hero for protection. The stranger insists this is a strategic retreat, letting Aslan handle the initial confrontation. The colossal beast raises its massive blade, preparing to strike them down. But Aslan simply looks on with a calm, almost nostalgic expression. He catches the devastating blow with a single outstretched hand. The dungeon master's eye widens in shock, a flicker of recognition in its gaze. The deflected force of the attack rips through the dungeon floor. The armored giant is sent flying backward, crashing through its own fortress walls. Aslan looks down, slightly surprised by the sheer force of the impact himself. Tori and the horned stranger can only stare in shock at the sudden turn of events. The dungeon master plummets into the abyss, vowing to pursue the old hero. But Aslan is falling too, complaining that his old bones can't handle a drop like this. Tori panics, but the horned stranger tells him to calm down, wondering what will happen if the hero falls. They remind him that Julius isn't worried, certain that the old man will be just fine. The stranger then turns their attention elsewhere, saying they have their own problems to worry about. They sense a new presence approaching, one that carries the scent of blood. A figure lands nearby, reeking of a monster that has slain countless others. Before them stands a small, trembling creature, clearly terrified of this newcomer. And from the shadows, a voice expresses its amusement at the scene. One of the small, friendly monsters lies defeated on the ground, its body broken. Another of the creatures trembles nearby, overcome with pure terror. Lumiel stands over the fallen beast, remarking that they've met again. Tori and the bandaged stranger can only look on in absolute horror. The knight captain addresses them directly, her royal knight standing menacingly behind her. Tori is completely appalled by her casual display of cruelty. Nearby, the tamer's slime cries out in fear and sorrow. A memory flashes by of a happier time, when the tamer and their monsters lived in peace. But that peaceful life has been shattered by this brutal reality. The bandaged stranger's eyes narrow, filled with a cold and simmering rage. The bandaged stranger lunges forward, landing a powerful blow on the knight captain. Tori can only cry out, recognizing the attacker as Julius. But Lumiel seems completely unfazed by the sudden assault. She condescendingly asks if they truly understand who they're messing with. Julius's eyes burn with rage, determined to teach the knight captain a lesson. They begin to channel a powerful lightning spell, unleashing a devastating current directly at Lumiel. The attack connects, but the knight captain doesn't even flinch. Julius is left stunned, unable to understand why their magic had no effect. Nearby, a small creature convulses as the lightning is redirected into it. The small creature lies broken on the ground, its life extinguished in an instant. But Julius's eyes widen in shock as she realizes something is terribly wrong. A dark, malevolent energy begins to seep from the fallen monster. Lumiel reveals her true power, a sinister ability to manipulate the dead. Julius can only stare in horror, realizing the Knight Captain is reanimating the corpses. With no other choice, she prepares to fight the very creatures she tried to protect. She lunges forward, striking at the twisted, reanimated forms. But her attacks only meet the resistance of lifeless puppets. The creatures let out silent screams, their bodies contorting in agony. Julius understands the true horror of Lumiel's power. She's forcing the dead to feel every moment of their torment. Lumiel mocks her, finding a perverse joy in the pain she's inflicting. She explains that the more Julius fights back, the more these creatures will suffer. Julius is completely surrounded, caught in a truly horrifying dilemma. Tori can only scream her name, powerless to intervene. He tries to push past the royal knights, desperate to help his friend. But Lumiel simply watches with a smug, confident smile. Julius grits her teeth, refusing to give in to this cruel game. Her eyes burn with a defiant rage, even as she's pushed to her limit. She endures the agony, her resolve hardening into something unbreakable. And she knows that Julius is fully aware of this horrifying truth. The reanimated creatures weep, unable to control their own bodies. Lumiel promises that for those who side with monsters, death will not come easily. She's completely surrounded, forced to trample over the very creatures she tried to save. Elsewhere, something small bounces off the top of Aslan's head. He looks around, wondering just how far down he's plummeted. He watches as chunks of rock and debris crash into the ground nearby. And from the dust, the colossal dungeon master emerges once more. Aslan simply stares back, his expression calm and unwavering. The cracks in the beast's helmet begin to spread even wider. It lunges forward, ready to finish their battle once and for all. Aslan looks up at the blade, a sudden realization dawning on him. He recognizes the weapon, identifying it as the sword of his old friend, Ragvald. His mind flashes back to the statue in town, confirming the memory. A wave of nostalgia washes over the old hero. He remembers his past, calling out his friend's name on the battlefield. A younger Ragvald asks if it's true he fought for 3 days straight without rest. He sits atop a pile of fallen monsters, questioning Aslan's reckless fighting style and endless stamina. Ragvald explains that he fights to save everyone, and will make up for any rest Aslan misses. But Aslan remembers there was another reason for his friend's tireless spirit. Ragvald reveals his sister was killed by demons while he was asleep, vowing to never rest again. Aslan's memory lingers on his friend's haunted expression. He even recalls Ragvald's bizarre ability to fight while literally sleepwalking. The old hero reflects that even back then, his friend possessed an almost inhuman level of stamina. But something about this armored giant doesn't add up. He questions if the creature wearing the armor and wielding the sword is truly Ragvald. After all, it hasn't said a word and doesn't seem to recognize him in the slightest. Wondering if his own memory is failing him, he decides to put his theory to the test. The dungeon master's helmet continues to crack under the strain. With a sudden burst of speed, Aslan closes the distance between them. And he slams his head directly into the beast's helmet with a powerful, unorthodox attack. The force of the blow sends the armored giant crashing to the ground. A memory flashes through Aslan's mind of him and Ragvald fighting side by side. The dungeon master's helmet finally shatters into 1,000 pieces. Aslan looks up, waiting to see the face of the warrior within. And beneath the broken armor is the unmistakable face of his old friend. The old hero's eyes widen, confirming it's truly him. Ragvald looks back, dazed and confused, as if waking from a long slumber. Aslan asks if he's out of breath, certain now that this is his long-lost companion. But his relief turns to concern as he looks at the sword in Ragvald's hand. The dungeon master seems to ask where he even got the weapon, his memory a complete blank. A powerful force slams directly into the dungeon master's armor. Aslan decides he has no choice but to use a fire spell he just recalled. He unleashes a devastating heat ray from his very fingertips. The dungeon master can only stare as the attack closes in. The beam of pure energy tears through the cavern, erupting in a massive, blinding explosion. The sheer force of the blast rips through the dungeon itself, shattering the very rock around them. Aslan watches the dust settle, certain the armor is now broken and its true form will be revealed. And from within the shattered helmet, an eye snaps open in utter shock. And from the shattered armor emerges a horned woman, her body battered and broken. Aslan stares in shock, recognizing the horns and scales of a dragonoid. The woman looks up, completely disoriented and questioning who she even is. He can only wonder if this is truly the dungeon master's true form. But his confusion deepens as he questions why she's wielding Ragvald's sword. The woman's eyes snap open, dazed and confused. She suddenly sits up, asking Aslan if he's finally awake. She explains that she has a question for her master. A dark, shadowy form materializes behind her as she speaks. But Aslan's gaze hardens, ready for whatever this new threat might be. The horned woman's expression twists into a furious snarl. Aslan can only stare, remarking that she looks like some kind of beast. Suddenly, a host of other monsters appears, asking him to let the woman go. He turns to the strange assembly, questioning who they are. The fish-like creature asks if he would be willing to hear their story. The horned woman still seems hostile, but the fish creature insists they have no choice but to talk. The creature then begins to praise the horned woman's strength and impressive physique. This unexpected praise leaves the dungeon master completely flustered and embarrassed. The fish creature explains that this woman is their companion and their guardian. They reveal that despite her intimidating appearance, she's actually quite shy. The fish creature explains that the armor was meant to hide her impressive physique, which Aslan accidentally destroyed. It then asks why he's here, noting he doesn't attack monsters like the knights do. Aslan simply explains he came to find his villa, only to discover it had become a dungeon. But the mention of his friend's name makes the creature's eyes go wide with shock. Aslan confirms he knows Ragvald, asking if this creature does as well. The fish-like monster falls silent for a moment, its expression unreadable. It then confirms that Ragvald is indeed here, in this very dungeon, and reveals the hero's true form, a grotesque mass of writhing tentacles. Ragvald's face is a mask of cold, empty darkness. Aslan can only look up in horror at what has become of his old friend. The fish creature confirms that this grotesque being is indeed the hero, Ragvald. He explains that for decades, Ragvald has protected them by creating this very dungeon. The story then flashes back to the past, revealing the truth of what happened. Decades ago, a younger Ragvald was on the run, exhausted from an endless battle. His eyes burned with a weary determination. But his body was clearly reaching its absolute limit. He collapsed, realizing that no matter how much he fought, the war would never truly be over. As he lay there, a mysterious horned figure appeared before him. The figure looked down, questioning if this fallen warrior was even human. Ragvald could only stare up in utter shock at the being before him. When Ragvald finally awoke, he was told he'd been asleep for an entire month. The horned figure introduces himself as Orochi, chief of the dragonoid clan deep within the demon continent. Ragvald panics, knowing the dragonoids are one of the most powerful demon races he once fought against. But the chief calmly explains that the war is over, for the hero has already defeated the demon king. The young hero is still confused, reminding the chief that he is a general from an enemy nation. Orochi simply says that everyone is exhausted from the fighting and sick of all the killing. He then asks Ragvald what his own feelings are on the matter. The hero reflects on the countless lives he took, believing he could never return to a peaceful life. Orochi tells him he was simply caught up in their mess and is free to leave once he's healed. Ragvald can only look up, stunned by this unexpected act of kindness. A small horned figure peeks out from the door. She looks on with a shy and curious expression. Orochi notices her, wondering what she's doing here. He explains this is his granddaughter, who came to see the rare human. Ragvald looks up, surprised by the young dragonoid's presence. She holds out a bowl of food, a simple offering for the wounded hero. Orochi explains that she's worried about him, regardless of his race. He muses that human children must be just as pure-hearted. Ragvald looks at the simple meal, a faint smile gracing his lips. He quietly accepts her kindness, his heart touched by the gesture. She looks up at him, trying to pronounce his name. Orochi smiles, proud that she's finally learning to speak. He learns that her parents were casualties of the very war he fought in. The news weighs heavily on him, and he offers a quiet apology. But Orochi tells him not to blame himself for the tragedies of war. Ragvald still can't understand their kindness, asking why they would help him. The old chief then reveals a somber truth: his own time is running out. Ragvald is stunned, unable to see any sign of weakness in the old warrior. With his final days approaching, he has one last request for the human hero. And without hesitation, Ragvald agrees to honor the old chief's wish. Orochi explains that with demons still crossing the border, he needs someone to take over his role as protector. Ragvald questions his own worthiness, but vows to protect the children from the horrors of war. The fish creature explains that soon after Orochi passed away, and Ragvald inherited his final wish. After the Demon King's fall, they were forced to flee their home on the Demon Continent. To protect the weary refugees, Ragvald created this dungeon as a safe haven. Their ultimate goal is to reach the demi-human nation, a place that accepts all races, even demons. The map shows their journey, with the dungeon serving as a crucial waypoint on their path. The dungeon was hidden by powerful magic, but someone recently broke the spell. Aslan realizes this is why the royal knights arrived, a fact the creature sadly confirms. The old hero can only look up at his friend's twisted form, whispering his name in disbelief. Aslan reflects that his friend has never changed, always protecting others. The dungeon's inhabitants realize that he must be the hero Ragvald spoke of. But their conversation is cut short by a sudden violent tremor. The very walls of the dungeon are blasted apart by an unseen force. A figure steps through the dust, remarking on how well they were hidden. A chilling voice declares that they have finally been found. Lumiel stands before them, holding a defeated Julius in her grasp. Her eyes are filled with a cold and victorious contempt. Aslan can only look on in horror, calling out his companion's name. Tori is held captive by the knights, asking if the old man is all right. Julius looks up, apologizing for her failure. Lumiel recognizes Aslan, mocking him as the senile old man from town. But the hero's expression is now cold and silent. The knight captain realizes with a surge of fury that his earlier act was all a lie. A sudden impact on the ground catches her completely by surprise. In an instant, Aslan has closed the distance and seized her by the arm. Lumiel can only scream, stunned by the old man's impossible speed and strength. Aslan declares that she has threatened both his old friend's legacy and his new companions. His eyes burn with a cold fury as he tells her there will be no mercy. Lumiel stares up in disbelief, demanding to know who this old man truly is. Aslan's grip tightens, his silent fury a stark contrast to his earlier act. But Lumiel simply smirks, unleashing a powerful electrical current through her own body. The attack has no effect, instead arcing around him and striking the reanimated monsters. He realizes with a start that these creatures are the very ones he met inside the dungeon. Ragvald's voice echoes, recognizing Lumiel's cruel hobby of manipulating the dead. But Lumiel scoffs at the accusation, mocking the very appearance of the monsters. The dungeon's inhabitants can only watch in horror at her casual cruelty. Ragvald's face twists into a mask of pure, unadulterated rage. He lets out a furious roar, his protective instincts taking over completely. And his grotesque, powerful form rises to defend his found family. Lumiel is stunned, realizing the creature's roar just completely nullified her lightning magic. Ragvald's monstrous form is consumed by a single murderous thought. He lunges forward, slamming his immense power against her blade, forcing Lumiel to struggle against the sheer weight of his attack. Seeing their captain in trouble, the royal knights seize their chance and take Tori hostage. Aslan can only look on, completely baffled by their sudden move. But in a flash, he's already rescued the boy, leaving the knights scattered on the ground. He hands Tori over to the dungeon's inhabitants, asking them to handle his wounds. Tori thanks him for the save, but points out that the dragonoid woman is still locked in battle with Lumiel, a warrior who is revealed to be none other than Ragvald's own disciple. The story flashes back decades, to a young dragonoid girl mourning her grandfather. She stands before his grave, asking Ragvald if the old chief is truly gone. Her voice trembles as she struggles to accept the truth of his death. Ragvald can only offer a quiet, somber confirmation. But he explains that even in death, Orochi's will lives on inside of them. A shared purpose to protect what is precious from the ravages of war. He tells her that from now on, he will carry the burden of that promise. The young dragonoid's eyes widen, repeating his words about protecting what's precious. Ragvald looks back, not quite understanding her reaction. But she points directly at him, declaring that he is the one who is precious to her. Ragvald can only look on in surprise as she asks if he is the one she should protect. With fierce determination, she declares that she will be the one to protect him and everything he holds dear. He simply smiles, patting her head and explaining that he was the one who intended to protect her. With a warm laugh, he calls her an amazing kid. And in the present, the dragonoid warrior stands ready, having taken his words to heart. Her face twists with rage as she screams that she'll never forgive those who threaten Ragvald's legacy. She stands with the dungeon's inhabitants, ready to defend their home. But they are opposed by one of the royal knight captains, a man named Gran. And beside him stands another captain, the menacing Jeragda. Lumiel's gaze hardens as she gives her knights a single, chilling order to attack. The battle begins as the dragonoid warrior clashes with the knight captain, Gran. She grits her teeth through the pain, refusing to be overpowered. But Gran channels a powerful, holy light into his weapon, unleashing a sacred technique that slams directly into her. The attack cracks her scales, but she endures the blow with sheer willpower. Lumiel watches the battle with a cold, analytical gaze. She explains that the armored giant was the true entrance to the dungeon, and that its movements are simple, driven only by a relentless need to hunt. Enraged, the dragonoid warrior lets out a furious roar, ready to tear him apart. But her attack is suddenly stopped by Aslan, who calmly tells her to wait. The dragonoid warrior can only stare, completely baffled by his sudden intervention. Aslan tells her to calm herself, explaining that she can't win if she loses her composure. He understands her rage, the feeling of having something precious threatened by others. But he warns that revenge can destroy a person, especially when they forget why they started fighting. If she is to strike, it must be with calm precision and absolute thoroughness. The dragonoid warrior declares that she will be the one to take down Lumiel. Aslan then asks if she can handle the other two knight captains as well. She steps forward, silently accepting the daunting task. But Tori joins her side, declaring that his friends were hurt too and he will help crush the royal knights. Aslan agrees this is a good opportunity for Tori to test his own power, though he can't be certain of the result. Aslan recalls the immense, overflowing magic he sensed from Tori before. He tells the boy this is the perfect chance to practice controlling that power. The knight captain Gran scoffs, mocking their overconfidence. But Tori proudly declares that he is now the disciple of the great hero. The dragonoid warrior agrees, seeing the knights as nothing more than training dummies. Jeragda sneers, calling them starving demons for daring to challenge the royal knights. The two captains move in, ready to teach the upstarts a brutal lesson. And so, the battle between the disciples and the captains begins. The dragonoid warrior notes that their opponents are clearly underestimating them. Tori grins, seeing this as the perfect opening to take the big one down first. The dragonoid warrior grins, confidently declaring she's got the big one figured out. But her confidence is shattered by a sudden, brutal blow. Tori steps forward, vowing to show them the power he's gained. He begins to channel his energy, letting out a powerful cry. But the power-up seems to strain his small body. And then it fizzles out, leaving him completely confused. Jeragda screams for his partner to put up his guard. But Tori's fist still connects with incredible force. The blow slams directly into Gran's armored body, sending a shockwave of pure power through him. The force of the blow ripples through the knight's armor. Even the dragonoid warrior is stunned by the sheer power of Tori's punch. Gran's armor begins to crack and corrode from the impact. His partner, Jeragda, can only stare in disbelief, questioning what just happened. He admits to himself that the boy's attack was far stronger than he ever expected. Tori taunts him, asking if he's scared now that his partner's armor has been breached. Jeragda denies it completely, covering his ears and screaming that he can't hear a thing. He then turns to his partner, asking if Gran is all right after taking such a hit. But Gran simply stands up, giving his comrade a reassuring thumbs up. He tells Jeragda not to worry, explaining he'd do anything to protect his partner. Jeragda is overcome with emotion, screaming about what a good person his partner is. Tori and the dragonoid warrior can only stare, finding the knight's emotional display rather strange. Jeragda then feigns an attack, lunging forward with a sudden burst of speed. He accuses them of being perverts, insisting their insults have nothing to do with the battle. He admits he's losing the war of words and begs Gran to say something to back him up. Gran simply puts a hand to his helmet, as if carefully considering his next move. His opponents can only watch, completely unimpressed by the bizarre display. Jeragda then relays Gran's message, boasting that he won't even need his other arm to crush them. Tori asks why Gran doesn't just say it himself, and Jeragda explains that his partner is just shy. With that, Jeragda orders his partner to unleash his true power and end this fight. The dragonoid warrior prepares to strike, her resolve hardened. She unleashes a powerful swing, aiming to cleave the knight in two. Her blade slices clean through Gran's helmet with a devastating impact. But the knight simply stands there, seemingly unfazed by the fatal blow. Tori notes that for all the bluster, the knight's movements were surprisingly easy to predict. The dragonoid warrior turns her attention to Jeragda, telling him he's next. She lunges forward, ready to end the second captain with another decisive strike. But her attack is stopped cold, and she questions how her opponent is even still moving. A horrifying realization dawns on her as she understands this isn't a man, but a magical puppet. A voice explains that the armor is merely a vessel, controlled by their master's will. Jeragda reveals their entire act was just a ploy to lower their opponent's guard. He then unleashes his true technique with a simple gesture. The dragonoid warrior is suddenly impaled by a flurry of sharp spikes erupting from Gran's armor. She can only look down in shock, blood trickling from her lips. Her hand goes limp, her strength fading as the trap springs shut. Tori can only scream out her name in a desperate panic. Aslan calls out as well, urging her to hold on. Jeragda looks down on them, remarking that his spell worked perfectly on such simple-minded Tori glares up at the knight captain, his eyes burning with pure hatred. Jeragda notes that only the boy is left, and mockingly offers to share some of his power. Jeragda begins to draw a dark, liquid energy from his puppet partner. Tori can only watch, completely stunned by this new development. The knight captain explains he's recalling all the magic he poured into the golem. He apologizes in advance, admitting this next move might be overkill. But instead of disappearing, Gran reforms with a new weapon, ready to fight for real. A dark energy glints from within the puppet's helmet. Tori is completely bewildered, trying to understand what he's even looking at. The knight moves in a blur, questioning if he even swung his sword. A piece of Tori's armor is sliced clean off, the attack too fast to see. The young adventurer is left on the ground, paralyzed by sheer terror. Tori can only reach out a trembling hand, completely outmatched. Jeragda scoffs, surprised the boy couldn't even react to his attack. He dismisses Tori as a mere distraction and turns to rejoin his captain. But as the young adventurer lies defeated on the ground, a dark power begins to stir. The horned stranger appears behind the knight, speaking in an ancient, unknown language. Jeragda turns back, completely baffled by this sudden interruption. But his confusion is cut short by a sudden, powerful impact. He looks up to see Tori, now transformed into a demonic figure with a terrifying grin. The knight captain can only stare in disbelief, wondering how the boy suddenly changed and regenerated his arm. Jeragda realizes with horror that the boy is no human, but a monster. With a furious roar, Tori lunges forward to attack. The knight captain panics, realizing the boy's magic is consuming space itself. After the attack, Tori pants heavily, the power taking a toll on his body. Jeragda's expression hardens, his confidence completely shattered. His subordinate asks if their commander is truly at a disadvantage against this boy. Tori stands unsteadily, his demonic form still raging. Jeragda realizes the boy's focus is gone, he's simply rampaging out of control. His subordinate suggests a cunning plan to lure Tori's attack towards someone else. Jeragda agrees, believing he can dodge just in time to let the blow land on their target. He positions himself perfectly, goading the rampaging boy to attack. Tori's demonic form responds, lunging forward with a mindless fury. But on the ground, the dragonoid warrior's eyes snap open. Jeragda screams for her to get out of the way, ready to execute his plan. But instead of dodging, the dragonoid warrior intercepts the blow, taking Tori's full power. She tells him that he is not someone who is meant to die here. Jeragda can only watch in shock, unable to believe she'd sacrifice herself to stop the boy. She insists that he can control this power, questioning why he's letting it consume him. Tori seems to respond, telling her that she is the one who can do it. The dragonoid warrior screams back, demanding to know who he is if he's truly the hero's disciple. Tori's monstrous arm seems to have a mind of its own. But the dragonoid warrior's eyes widen with a sudden understanding. She declares that of course she knows what to do now. Jeragda can only stare, demanding to know how this is possible. She explains that she saw the instant his magic transferred from the golem. Her actions help Tori regain his senses, realizing his power was linked to magic. He explains that by focusing his power into his arm, his mind finally cleared. In that single moment, he learned to control the immense power within him. Jeragda panics, begging him not to use that devastating attack again. But Tori's eyes burn with rage, screaming that he'll never forgive them for hurting his friends. Tori unleashes a devastating, twisting blow with his monstrous arm. The attack connects with Jeragda's body, the impact visceral and immediate. The Knight Captain's form contorts under the immense, unnatural force. His body is completely torn apart by the sheer power of the strike. What's left of the Knight Captain collapses uselessly to the ground. Tori can only stare, realizing he's actually won the fight. But his victory is immediately soured by a wave of nausea. He's completely sickened by the brutal way he just defeated his opponent. The young adventurer is horrified by his own grotesque and twisted technique. And now that he's calmed down, he realizes his own arm is just as monstrous. The dragonoid warrior reminds him that he was supposed to have that power under control. And with a sudden pop, his monstrous arm reverts back to its normal form. She turns in shock to see Tori covered in the aftermath of his attack. She asks if he's all right, but he realizes it's just splashback and breathes a sigh of relief. She then praises his technique, admitting it was truly incredible to witness. Tori just smiles, proudly declaring that he is the hero's disciple after all. The dragonoid warrior agrees, saying the hero's disciple is certainly no pushover. The two of them hang there for a moment, exhausted but united by their shared battle. They both collapse to the ground, noting that only the Knight Captain is left standing. Elsewhere, Aslan seems to say that there's no need to worry about the old man. Aslan notes that Tori has learned to control his power far faster than he ever did. But while he's proud of his disciple's growth, he knows there's still work to be done. Lumiel steps forward, ready to deliver the final blow. She's the last of her knights standing, but her expression is one of pure, unyielding fury. A dark energy surrounds her as she prepares to unleash her full power. Aslan meets her challenge, channeling a powerful lightning spell of his own. He unleashes a devastating torrent of violet lightning. A technique so powerful it seems to tear the very air apart. The resulting explosion engulfs the entire battlefield in a blinding flash. As the smoke clears, Aslan looks on, waiting to see the outcome of his attack. Aslan stands amidst the crackling energy, remarking that her ultimate spell was just what he needed to loosen his stiff muscles. He appears behind her, questioning if her desperate struggle is finally over. Lumiel can only let out a small, choked sound in response. But her shock quickly twists into a fit of manic, unhinged laughter. Aslan asks what's so funny, wondering if being cornered has finally broken her mind. She explains that she's laughing because everything is going exactly according to her plan. Suddenly, skeletal arms erupt from a hidden magic circle, seizing the old hero. Lumiel reveals her true trap, a powerful ancient sealing magic. Aslan can only look on in shock, realizing he's been caught. He watches as his own body begins to dissolve into dust. Aslan recognizes the intricate runes of the magic circle. Lumiel explains that while his power is immense, ancient magic has ways of dealing with the strong. This particular spell is fueled by the souls of 66 loyal followers, sacrificing them to seal an opponent's power. And the stronger the target, the more powerful the seal becomes in response. Aslan is completely baffled, wondering where she could have possibly learned such a forbidden technique. Lumiel admits that the seal won't hold him for very long. But seeing the hero in such a state is clearly giving her immense satisfaction. But even as his body fades, Aslan's hand suddenly shoots out and grabs her arm. The Knight Captain is completely stunned by his impossible reaction. He tells her that her spell was simply too slow to catch him completely. His grip tightens on her arm, but Lumiel only offers a condescending smirk. The old hero's eyes widen as the sealing magic finally takes its toll. Lumiel looms over him, mocking that he's finally acting his age. Tori can only scream out his master's name in a desperate panic. Aslan collapses to the ground, clutching his chest in apparent agony. But the horned stranger simply watches, their expression unreadable. Aslan looks up from the ground, declaring that now the real battle can begin. The horned stranger floats above, ready to make their move. Tori and the stranger can only watch, calling out to the fallen hero. But Aslan holds a blade to his own neck, realizing his body is no longer his to command. Lumiel's face twists into a horrifying grin as she tells him there's no escape. She lunges forward, ready to strike down the seemingly helpless hero. But her glasses suddenly crack as she stares in utter disbelief. Aslan is no longer in front of her, having moved in an impossible instant. She can't comprehend how the old man could have gotten behind her so quickly. A small glowing stone appears in the old hero's hand. He unleashes a powerful wave of energy directly at the Knight Captain. The blast slams into Lumiel, catching her completely off guard. Aslan calmly closes his hand around the now-drained magic stone. Lumiel can only stare, wondering when he could have possibly acquired such an item. He reveals the item is a magic stone, a tool that unleashes a set amount of power. But Lumiel simply scoffs, knowing such items have limited uses and are far too weak to defeat her. She realizes he used a wind stone's power to evade her earlier attack. And he unleashes another blast of pure elemental force. The Knight Captain braces for the sudden, powerful impact. But the old hero's expression shifts to one of pure shock. Lumiel stands completely unscathed, mocking that such a weak spell could never harm her. She then summons a barrage of crystalline shards, ready to end the fight. Her gaze is cold and confident, certain of her impending victory. Aslan can only look on as the deadly projectiles close in around him. He realizes he's used an Earth-type magic stone, wondering how far he'll have to go. Lumiel screams in fury, questioning how long he intends to mock her with these pathetic attacks. But Aslan admits he was just toying with her before and will now stop holding back. He gathers his remaining strength for one final, desperate move, and unleashes the last of the magic stone's power in a concentrated blast. Lumiel simply taunts him, asking where he's even aiming with his strength all but gone. But Aslan declares that this will be the finishing blow. The attack connects with a devastating, chaotic impact. Lumiel's face is bloodied, but she only breaks into a fit of wild laughter. She cackles that everything has been blown away, and now she can finally face the knights. She screams that the actions of the royal knights are the only true justice. Tori and the dragonoid warrior can only look on in stunned silence. But Aslan simply lets out a weary sigh, completely unimpressed. He questions if her so-called absolute justice is really this pathetic. Lumiel can only stare back in utter disbelief. She realizes he used a collection of water magic stones to absorb her lightning. Aslan explains that she can't defeat him if he simply defends against her attacks. He then reveals that his own preparations are already complete. A massive fireball materializes, powered by a single glowing magic stone. Lumiel is stunned, unable to comprehend how one stone could create such a powerful spell. Lumiel can only stare back, her confidence finally cracking. Aslan calmly begins to explain his true strategy. A horrifying realization begins to dawn on the Knight Captain. She understands now that the wind magic he used earlier was never meant to be an attack at all. He simply used it to feed the fire stone, amplifying its power beyond anything she could have imagined. But even with that immense firepower, she never noticed the true attack hidden in her blind spot. The old hero then reveals a small, unassuming vial. Inside is a skeel mosquito, a creature whose poison has a paralyzing effect. And at the same time, he activated an earth magic stone he'd prepared in advance. Lumiel's eyes widen as she realizes the poison is spreading from a single wound. He then reveals another vial, this one containing a potent basilisk venom. A poison he applied at the exact same time as his other attacks. The Knight Captain finds herself completely unable to move, her body frozen in place. Tori and the dragonoid warrior can only stare, amazed he could do all this with his power sealed. The dungeon's inhabitants finally understand the true power of the legendary hero. Lumiel can only glare in helpless fury as the massive fireball descends. Aslan admits it's been a long time since he's enjoyed a battle of pure wits and brute force. She screams in agony as the flames engulf her, the paralyzing poison finally wearing off. He wonders if she's finally given up, knowing that even in death, a monster's body can be tormented. But Lumiel's eyes widen in defiance, refusing to believe it's over. Aslan explains that the water he used to absorb her lightning is now superheating the air, making his own fire burn even hotter. The Knight Captain's body begins to melt under the combined assault. Her form dissolves into a smoldering heap on the ground. But even as she melts away, a faint sound escapes her. A grotesque, melted face emerges, begging him to finish her off. She demands that he take her head and grant her a final release. Aslan's hand clenches, his decision made. But the old hero simply looks down and refuses her request. Aslan reveals this is the effect of a cursed item known as the mermaid's tail fin. He asks if she truly desires a warrior's death, before telling her he will never grant that wish. She screams that she won't be denied her honorable end, forced to live on in this grotesque form. He explains the curse's side effect. Her body will now be rejected by water, forever dehydrating. Her skin will crack like a sun-scorched desert, and even when the flames die, the burning sensation will torment her for all eternity. The Knight Captain can only scream in pure, unadulterated agony. Aslan's expression is cold as he reveals he's already struck her with the cursed item. Her body continues to dissolve, her voice fading into a choked gasp. Her eye stares out from the molten ruin of her face. He asks if she finally understands that for her, this hell will never end. He declares this is her atonement, stepping on the last of her remains. With the battle finally over, Aslan turns away with a cold, grim expression. Tori calls out to his master, his voice filled with concern. He rushes forward, praising the old hero for defeating the Knight Captain. The young adventurer throws his arms around Aslan in a relieved embrace. He admits he was terrified, especially when the sealing magic took hold. But the horned stranger points out that Aslan is foaming at the mouth, much to Tori's horror. He realizes the weakening spell is still active as his master's mind seems to fade. With a sudden gasp, the old hero snaps back to his senses. He then points to the distance, claiming his old war buddies are waving from the afterlife and that he's been revived. The horned stranger is horrified by Tori's suggestion to simply shake the senility out of Aslan. But their bizarre conversation is interrupted as the ground begins to tremble violently. Aslan blames his weakened state for his blurry vision, but Tori insists the shaking is real. The young adventurer looks up in horror, realizing the entire dungeon is collapsing. As a massive boulder falls, Aslan announces he's suddenly feeling much better. The dungeon begins to crumble around them, the structure failing under the strain. The horned stranger realizes the aftershocks from their battle are destroying Ragvald's sanctuary. She looks up in a panic, calling out her old friend's name. But Aslan simply looks on with a grim, knowing expression. The dragonoid warrior and Tori can only watch as the dungeon collapses around them. The dragonoid warrior screams out in terror, realizing Ragvald's life is in danger. Aslan holds Tori close, warning him to stay alert as the cavern falls apart. A massive slab of rock plummets directly towards the horned stranger. The dragonoid warrior's eyes widen in horror, bracing for the inevitable. The ceiling crashes down with a deafening roar, kicking up a cloud of dust. But the warrior finds herself still alive, confused by the lack of impact. She looks up to see she's been shielded from the falling debris. Ragvald's monstrous form has caught the massive boulder, protecting everyone below. Aslan calmly looks over, asking if the young warrior is unharmed. She can only look up in awe, saved by the very person she swore to protect. The dragonoid warrior looks up at the man who just saved her, her master Ragvald. Overcome with emotion, she can only cry out his name in relief. Ragvald gently pats her head, glad that his actions were able to save her. Aslan steps forward, greeting his old friend after so many long years apart. Ragvald seems confused, so Tori explains that this old man is indeed the hero Aslan. The revelation leaves Ragvald completely speechless and bewildered. He finally screams in disbelief, unable to accept that this is the hero he once knew. He laments how cruel time has been, wondering where the handsome young hero of his memories went. Aslan tells him not to worry about the destroyed villa, as it was his idea to build it there anyway. The dungeon's inhabitants are overjoyed, finally able to speak with their protector once more. Ragvald looks over at his companions, his expression grim. He apologizes for being a poor guardian, unable to protect them any longer. He explains that with his own life force fading, the dungeon he created is collapsing. That's why he emerged to find a solution before his time runs out. The only way to save the dungeon is to find a new soul to power it in his place. Tori is confused by the idea, but Aslan suddenly has a realization. He declares that he knows of a perfect soul for the job, one that's very close by. Elsewhere, a hand made of molten ruin reaches out from the ground. It's the remains of Lumiel, still screaming in agony from the undying curse. A curse that keeps her burning for eternity, a perfect, endless source of power. Lumiel's molten form screams, desperate to find a way out of this hell. Tori spots her charred remains trying to crawl up a pile of rubble. The knight captain realizes with a start that she's been noticed. She knows that if she's caught, there will be no second chance at escape. But her desperate scramble is cut short by a sudden violent tremor. Tori looks up in alarm as the cavern ceiling begins to give way. He and Aslan can only stare in disbelief at the sudden collapse. The path she was climbing is now completely blocked by a wall of fallen rock. Lumiel can only gasp, her last hope of freedom completely cut off. But her despair twists into a manic laugh, believing this is a miracle from the gods themselves. She declares that she will wait for the demons and send her soldiers back to the castle. The horned stranger simply calls this turn of events a miracle. They mockingly ask if their own presence here is also the will of the gods. With a sudden move, they seize the knight captain's molten arm. They coldly inform her that the gods don't seem to want her back. But a sudden noise interrupts them, as Lumiel realizes an escort has arrived. A hand suddenly bursts through the rubble nearby. An old man emerges, calling out to Julius and saying his healing magic is ready. Julius seems to agree, noting that with his help they can survive this ordeal. Lumiel can only look on, wondering what they intend to do with her now. Aslan explains that the dungeon needs a soul with endless life force, and her undying curse is the perfect solution. Lumiel is horrified, realizing they intend to make her the dungeon's new power source. She screams in defiance, refusing to sustain a home for the very monsters she despises. But a hand seizes her molten face, silencing her protests. She is slammed hard against the cavern floor with brutal force. The knight captain can only gasp, her strength completely gone. Aslan looks down, his decision already made. She begs him to stop, refusing to become nourishment for the dungeon. The story then flashes back to two young warriors, their faces set with determination. A memory of a scarred and powerful back from a battle fought long ago. Lumiel's final, agonizing scream echoes as her soul is consumed by the dungeon. A brilliant flash of light erupts from the very core of the structure. And just like that, the grotesque form of Ragvald begins to recede. Tori and the dragonoid warrior realize with a start that the collapse has completely stopped. Aslan looks down at his friend, relieved that their desperate plan was a success. He closes his eyes, believing he can now finally rest in peace. But Ragvald now returned to his human form, thanks Julius for giving him this chance. He gently touches their face, grateful for one last opportunity to protect someone. But his hand begins to crack and crumble into dust. He smiles peacefully as his body fades away, leaving Julius to cry out his name in shock. The dragonoid warrior holds him close, apologizing for failing to protect him. But Ragvald dismisses her words, questioning what she's even saying. The dungeon's inhabitants can only watch in stunned silence, their faces filled with sorrow. Every last one of them weeps for their fallen protector. He tells her that she protected him plenty, and that it was his turn to protect what was precious to him. And with those final words, his body dissolves completely into dust. Aslan looks on with a sad smile, glad he got to see his friend one last time. He wishes his old friend peace, even on the other side. The dragonoid warrior clutches a photo of a young Aslan, wondering where this hero of legend has gone. Elsewhere, a man with long black hair sits up in bed, trying to get the attention of the person beside him. A woman beside him asks why he's staring at a portrait, hoping it's not an old flame. He clarifies that the person in the picture is a man, though he seems hesitant to say more. Tears stream down his face as he remembers the person he lost. An old man's voice explains that this was the person he loved most in the world. Back in the town of beginnings, the story of what happened has begun to spread. The townspeople can hardly believe it, asking if they truly defeated Lumiel and the royal knights. One asks in disbelief if the dungeon was really built on the site of the hero's old villa. Another can't comprehend that they were protecting monsters inside. A cloaked figure confirms that the hero Ragvald was indeed the one leading them, a fact Aslan quietly affirms. The sheer amount of information is too much for some to handle, wondering who these people are that could take down an entire knight order. Aslan sheepishly admits that he was, at one point, known as the hero. The crowd of adventurers can only stare back, their minds struggling to process this revelation. The news sends a shockwave through the onlookers, who can't believe what they're hearing. A man steps forward, introducing himself as the guild master, saying he never thought he'd see the legendary Aslan in person. He confirms the rumors of the Royal Knight's defeat, and Aslan quietly affirms that it's true. The guild master is actually grateful, explaining that the knight's brutal methods were becoming a problem. Their indiscriminate hunting has thrown the entire region's ecosystem out of balance. He then turns to the dragonoid warrior, confirming that while the battle was difficult, the dungeon has been successfully cleared. He wonders aloud if this outcome will be enough to satisfy the authorities back in the capital. But he quickly laughs it off, suggesting they hold a grand memorial service as an excuse to drink, much to the horror of a nearby adventurer. The adventurers in the crowd seem to love the idea, offering their enthusiastic support. The guild master declares that the matter is settled, much to Tori's bemusement. The dragonoid warrior then turns to Tori, asking if he is truly Ragvald's disciple. She recalls Aslan's words, realizing Ragvald had protected this very town during the war. The guild master's expression turns serious as he reveals that Ragvald was his savior. He remembers being saved by the hero as a young man, realizing Ragvald was always protecting someone. He then declares that their toast will be a true memorial, honoring Ragvald in their hearts. The group stands together in quiet reflection after the ceremony. Sometime later, Tori asks Aslan what their next destination will be, and the old hero reveals his plan to find the Demon King. But Aslan admits that while he has a goal, he has almost no leads to follow. Aslan updates his end-of-life checklist, noting his reunion with Ragvald. The fish creature asks if he truly knows anything about the Demon King's whereabouts. It explains that they are now heading to the demi-human nation, a place where a figure rumored to be the Demon King now resides. The news leaves both Aslan and Tori completely stunned. Julius considers the lead, realizing it's worth investigating. With no other information to go on, Aslan agrees it's their only option. And so, the group sets out for the demi-human nation. Their journey continues through the night, the great dragon pulling their cart. As a new day dawns, their long journey is well underway. As Tori calls out to him, Aslan sleeps soundly in the back of the cart. He shakes the old hero awake, panicking that he'd stopped breathing in his sleep. Aslan dismisses it as a common occurrence, which only makes his young disciple even more worried. The dragonoid warrior announces that they're about to arrive at their destination. But the old hero's memory fails him once again, and he asks where they're even going. Before them lies the entrance to the demi-human nation of Baltrenia, a fortress carved from ice and rock. Tori marvels at the massive gate, sculpted into the face of a roaring beast. He's ready to rush inside, but the fish creature quickly tells him to hold on. Aslan warns them that it's too dangerous for humans to enter the nation at this time. Julius explains that the leading candidate for the throne is known for his hatred of humans, and with a harsh crackdown underway, something strange is definitely happening inside. Tori complains about not being told this crucial detail sooner, while the dragonoid warrior warns him not to be so conspicuous. But the fish creature has a brilliant idea, suggesting they can enter if they simply stop being human. A suggestion that leaves Tori utterly speechless and confused. Inside the city of Baltrenia, the streets are filled with demi-humans of all kinds. It's a bustling hub where countless different races live and work together. The dragonoid warrior and the fish creature blend in easily with the diverse crowd. The fish creature seems relieved, noting that everyone managed to pass through the checkpoint without issue. Aslan, for his part, has disguised himself as a dwarf, though his disguise isn't particularly convincing. Julius has reverted to her full slime form, a look that leaves no doubt about her non-human nature. They then turn to find Tori, who has also found a way to conceal his human identity. Tori can only look down, his voice barely a whisper. He asks in utter disbelief if this cat-person disguise was truly their only option. The dragonoid warrior insists the look suits him perfectly, much to Tori's embarrassment. Even Julius struggles to contain her laughter at the ridiculous sight. The warrior explains that the only transformation potion they had was for a cat person, a race known for their revealing attire. To make matters worse, she adds that he'll have to adopt their speech patterns as well. The others seem to love the idea, agreeing that it would be an adorable addition to his disguise. Tori points out that Julius has no room to talk, given her own lack of clothing. But she simply retorts that for a slime, this is perfectly natural. An argument that, given her current form, is hard to dispute. The argument leaves Tori completely flustered and at a loss for words. Julius teases him about his revealing outfit, prompting a mortified outburst from the young adventurer. Nearby, a couple of locals comment on Julius's own form, finding it a bit much. The fish creature quickly changes the subject, bringing their attention back to the search for the Demon King. It reveals that the champion of the local fighting arena is rumored to be the Demon King himself, an undefeated and overwhelmingly powerful warrior. The mention of a fighting arena immediately catches Tori's attention. But Aslan questions why the Demon King would be in such a conspicuous place. Julius explains that the Demon King she knew was actually quite the showman and loved the attention. Aslan then asks if she remembers the armor he wore during their final battle. The old hero's mind flashes back, recalling an imposing suit of armor that looked difficult to move in, but was undeniably cool. Julius argues that the Demon King was always obsessed with aesthetics, a point Tori finds strangely convincing. With that, Tori declares they should investigate the fighting arena's champion. The dragonoid warrior adds that the champion is known to frequent a local tavern. Tori asks what kind of place they're talking about. The warrior explains it's a place called the Moon Rabbit's Mansion. The name alone seems to catch the group completely off guard. The flyer itself features a woman in a bunny outfit, an image Tori finds surprisingly charming. The fish creature suggests that Tori and Julius should be the ones to infiltrate the establishment. Both are stunned by the suggestion, while Aslan decides he'll check out the fighting arena on his own. And so their destination is set, the ominous-looking Moon Rabbit's Mansion. Inside, the VIP section of the tavern is buzzing with excitement. The crowd roars as the arena's champion finally makes his grand entrance. He offers a cool greeting to his adoring fans. A wolf-like man with an air of confidence who clearly enjoys the attention. He's immediately swarmed by admirers who praise his impressive performance. A young cat girl approaches him, saying she has something important to ask. She spins a sob story about needing a new home so she can take care of her sick mother. A property that just so happens to be a luxurious mansion worth a fortune. His companion seems skeptical, noting that people often try to trick the champion out of his money. But the champion simply agrees to buy it for her, telling her to leave her mother's care to him. His generosity is immediately put to the test as a crowd of people begs for his help. But he simply smiles, agreeing to pay for everything without a second thought. Tori can only watch, baffled by the champion's seemingly endless kindness. A kindness that seems almost too good to be true. The champion basks in the feeling of being useful to others. He declares that he'll do anything to make people smile, even if it means giving away his fortune. It's all for the sake of the people who need him, the ones who give his life purpose. His companion wonders if the champion is a genuinely good person, or just a complete fool. The other man admits he once thought the same, but suggests they see him fight in the arena. For in the ring, he is a warrior worthy of being called the Demon King. A man whose senses are honed by countless battles. His hands are scarred, a testament to a life of combat. And his eyes hold the weight of a long and storied past. For this is Ramshackle Gringer, the current champion and a former beast knight from the hero's own party. A few days later, inside the Moon Rabbit's mansion. The plan to gather information is well underway. Tori, forced into a humiliating new role, tries his best to serve the customers. But his disguise has attracted some very unwanted attention. A leering customer tries to get him to sit down, but Tori nervously offers him water instead. The man insists, however, eager to buy the young adventurer a drink and get him intoxicated. Tori can only grit his teeth, wondering how his life has come to this. The tavern's manager seems pleased, deciding to put all three of them to work starting immediately. He presents them with their new uniforms, promising to teach them the art of customer service. Tori stares in horror, insisting this is not how an undercover investigation is supposed to work. But Julius explains that the arena's champion, the so-called Demon King, is a regular patron here. Tori argues that they could just go to the arena to find him. But the dragonoid warrior explains that security there is too tight, making this their only option. The others tease that a wig would make him look even cuter, much to Tori's mortification. Suddenly, a customer calls out, specifically requesting Julius's attention. She turns with a professional smile, thanking him for the request and playing her part perfectly. A customer compliments Julius's translucent form, while Tori can only stare, wondering why she's enjoying this so much. Tori then glances over at the dragonoid warrior, questioning if she'll be able to handle this kind of work. The manager agrees, telling the warrior she doesn't seem suited for customer service. But he then reveals his true feelings, admitting he has a deep appreciation for tall, powerful women. The manager suddenly realizes he's dealing with a very dangerous customer. But the warrior is completely flustered, blushing at the unexpected compliment. Her reaction only terrifies the manager more, who begs her to stay away. Tori forces a smile, making a quick excuse to escape the chaotic scene. He ducks into a nearby room to catch his breath. The young adventurer collapses, completely overwhelmed by the impossible situation. He complains to Julius that the creepy customer and the ridiculous cat person act are just too much to handle. But she just scolds him for slacking off, while Tori cries out that he's reached his absolute limit. Julius proudly declares she's already the #2 earner in the tavern, telling him not to lose sight of their mission. Her words make them both pause, as they realize they've gotten completely sidetracked by their new jobs. She recalls a past mission where she got a little too invested in her role as a spy, a story that only horrifies Tori. Their argument is interrupted by a new horned woman, who asks if everyone is all right. But she seems completely flustered, admitting she's starting to like all the compliments she's been getting. Tori and Julius can only stare, with Tori remarking that her situation is even worse than his. Suddenly, the door opens as someone asks about the Demon King, admitting they haven't found any information yet. A man with long hair stands in the doorway, asking if they are the ones looking for the arena's champion. Tori and Julius turn in surprise, questioning who this newcomer is. A woman in a bunny outfit introduces herself as Evergreen, the tavern's #1 earner. Julius suddenly remembers seeing her face on one of the tavern's flyers. With a sudden shove, Evergreen pins the slime general against the wall. She glares, identifying Julius as the new girl who shot up to the #2 spot in a single day. Julius calmly confirms that this is true. Evergreen furiously explains that the arena's champion is her exclusive client, and Julius is breaking the rules by trying to get close. She then issues a challenge. If they can't take the #1 spot by the end of the day, they're to be thrown out. With a final warning, she walks away, leaving Julius to consider the ultimatum. Julius simply smirks, declaring that all they need to do is become #1. An hour passes and the competition is in full swing. The tavern's manager takes the stage to announce the current sales rankings. To his absolute horror, Tori is announced as the third-place earner, much to the delight of his new fans. He can't understand how this happened, terrified by the unwanted attention he's receiving. In second place is Julius, who graciously thanks the crowd for their support. Her unique appeal has drawn some very strange requests, a fact that only disgusts Tori. The manager then moves on to announce the #1 spot. And to no one's surprise, it's Evergreen who offers a shy and flustered thank you. Julius grits her teeth in frustration, while Tori points out that Evergreen's personality is a complete act. He then reminds them that at this rate, they'll never get any information on the Demon King. Julius admits it will be difficult to win, but reveals she has a plan. A plan that involves putting all her effort into making Tori the #1 earner. She explains that his popularity is based entirely on his appearance, and if he just tries, he can easily surpass her. And with that, she begins to give him a very intense lesson on customer service. Meanwhile, Aslan wanders the city streets on his own. He seems to be lost in thought, considering his next move. His mind drifts back to his battle with Lumiel, trying to recall the ancient magic she used. He remembers the powerful sealing spell that summoned skeletal arms to restrain him. He finally understands the nature of the technique, a forbidden art that seals an opponent's power in exchange for a soul. A sudden realization seems to strike him as he remembers a crucial detail. A sudden brilliant idea seems to form in the old hero's mind. He wonders if it's possible to seal his own power by will alone, without the need for a soul sacrifice. The very concept seems to baffle his skeletal companion. He recalls the feeling of having his power sealed, realizing how difficult it is to control his immense strength. And so he sets a new goal for himself, to learn how to fight effectively even in a weakened state. He sees it as a wonderful new challenge for his old age, one his companion will surely help him with. He immediately adds this new objective to his end-of-life checklist. The fish creature approaches, asking the hero what he's so focused on. Elsewhere, Aslan sits in a tavern, now disguised as a Viking, while his skeletal companion holds up a small potion. The fish creature recognizes the magic, asking if it's the same kind used by the man with the glasses. The fish creature can't understand why he'd want to use magic to weaken himself. But Aslan explains that being too strong dulls the senses, making him vulnerable. He believes that only by facing true danger can a warrior's instincts be truly honed. The fish creature still doesn't quite grasp his logic. It finally realizes with a start that the hero is just a battle addict. Aslan seems thrilled by the idea, admitting the experience has awakened a new passion for fighting. The fish creature can see it in his eyes, a familiar gleam of someone obsessed with the thrill of the fight. He then explains that while the others are investigating the so-called Demon King, he'll simply enter the fighting arena and win his way to the top. And he'll do it all with his power sealed, just for the sheer thrill of the challenge. The fish creature tries to warn him, explaining that it's too dangerous to enter the arena right now. It seems a host of powerful warriors have gathered, including an exiled knight commander and even one of the Demon King's former generals. Aslan can only stare back in utter disbelief at this news. The fish creature confirms it, saying that sealing his power against such opponents has only made the old hero even more determined to fight. The creature begs him to reconsider, but Aslan simply smiles, calling this the ultimate threat. He calmly looks over his end-of-life checklist, completely unfazed by the danger. But his attention is suddenly drawn to a shadowy figure nearby. A tall, imposing man with long black hair stands right behind him. Aslan looks back, a flicker of recognition in his eyes as he wonders where he's seen this man before. The man's expression is somber, as if a familiar scent has triggered a distant memory. He looks down at a flyer for the fighting arena, wondering if he should participate. He feels out of place, questioning if someone should stop him before he makes a mistake. He walks through the lonely streets, feeling invisible even when he tries to speak to others. He reflects on his own shyness, admitting he's only ever been comfortable talking to women. He resolves to become stronger, believing it's the only way he can truly be of use to anyone. Back at the tavern, the commotion has reached a fever pitch. Tori fully commits to his role, trying to get a customer drunk as part of their plan. Julius and the horned stranger watch with pride, with Julius declaring Tori her #1 disciple. The manager announces that Tori's sales have been so overwhelming, he's just set a new record for the entire establishment. Evergreen can only stare in fury, unable to believe she's been surpassed by this newcomer. Tori, meanwhile, has been completely broken by the experience, willing to do anything to make it stop. His overwhelming success has made him the tavern's new #1, with the entire crowd raising a glass in his honor. But just as the stress becomes too much to bear, the manager announces that the champion has finally arrived. And to his horror, Tori realizes he's been requested to serve the man himself. The champion, Ramshackle Gringer, approaches, asking if this is the new sensation everyone's been talking about. He leans in close, remarking that with such beauty, it's no wonder he's become #1. But something about the champion's demeanor catches Tori completely off guard. Gringer seems impressed, finding the young adventurer's service surprisingly refined and gentlemanly. A reaction that only sends Tori into a full-blown panic, certain the champion has fallen for him despite him being a boy. The champion casually orders a glass of wine, while Tori watches him with a nervous, sideways glance. Gringer smiles, finding the boy's polite demeanor a refreshing change from his usual clientele. He confirms the young adventurer's name, and Tori offers a flustered reply. But the champion's gaze suddenly hardens as he asks if Tori has any martial arts training. The question catches Tori completely off guard, but Gringer explains he's good at spotting a fighter. Tori stammers that he's learned some self-defense, realizing his movements gave him away. Gringer simply smiles, repeating the words with a knowing look. The young adventurer can only sweat in silence, his cover completely blown. But the champion simply raises his glass, suggesting they share a drink instead. Tori plays his part, offering a toast to the champion's continued success. Gringer accepts, his gaze steady as he raises his own glass. The two of them clink their glasses together in a seemingly friendly gesture. But the champion's glass suddenly shatters in his hand, leaving him completely stunned. Tori asks if he's all right, feigning concern over the broken glass. But Gringer's mind is racing, realizing he just felt a sinister and powerful magic emanating from the boy. From a distance, Julius and the dragonoid warrior watch with concern, hoping Tori hasn't caused a scene. Suddenly, a mysterious hooded figure appears nearby. The figure grabs the dragonoid warrior, saying they overheard her and want her to come with them. Meanwhile, Tori looks up from cleaning the mess, realizing the champion has completely vanished. Tori turns in surprise as a familiar voice calls out to him. A young cat girl greets him with a cheerful smile, asking where the champion has gone. But Gringer suddenly appears behind her, flanked by two other women saying he has a question. The young cat girl can only stammer, completely caught off guard by his sudden return. Meanwhile, Aslan has arrived at the fighting arena, ready to begin his own investigation. He's told that this is the place, and anyone wishing to participate should line up. A staff member asks a horned warrior to sign a contract before entering. The warrior scoffs at the waiver, knowing that everyone here is prepared to risk their life. The staff member calmly explains that while many start out confident, they often change their tune when faced with death. In the end, she says, they're always forced to confront their own mortality. The staff member snaps her fingers, explaining that when faced with death, everyone begs for their life. Her words seem to hit home for some of the other warriors in line. A different staff member then approaches Aslan to get his signature. But the old hero complains that he can't read the contract without his glasses. The staff member patiently reads the waiver, which absolves the arena of all responsibility. Aslan agrees to the terms, ready to sign his life away without a second thought. The horned warrior beside him asks where to put his own signature. Aslan's gaze remains fixed on the paper, his focus unwavering. But his memory fails him again, and he can't even recall his own name for the form. He finally holds up the completed form, asking if he's done it right. The staff member smiles, happily accepting his registration. The other warriors are stunned, complaining that an old dwarf's entry makes them look weak. But the staff member sees it differently, believing his presence has steeled their resolve. The warriors are then instructed to choose their weapons for the coming battle. With the preliminaries already underway, they are led into the arena in order of registration. They walk down a dark, candlelit corridor, the air thick with anticipation. Before them is a massive crowd of fighters, all waiting for their chance at glory. The path leads them to the very edge of the fighting pit itself. And in the darkness, the first battle begins with a sudden, brutal clash. A staff member with pointed ears welcomes them with a cheerful smile. Aslan, however, is lost in pure bliss, savoring the thrill of fighting with his power sealed. The staff member explains that this is the fighting arena, where the winners of the preliminaries will advance. But she clarifies that the contestants will not be fighting each other. Instead, their opponents will be far more monstrous. She reveals that two special-grade, highly dangerous monsters have been released into the pit. The first two warriors to successfully defeat one of these beasts will earn their spot in the main tournament. She explains that with 4 different venues, a total of 8 fighters will advance to the finals. Aslan wonders if being the first to enter gives him an advantage, considering he could just defeat the monster immediately. But another fighter realizes the old dwarf doesn't understand the strategy, letting others weaken the beast before stealing the final blow. A fighter screams that the monsters aren't the simple trolls and wyverns they were promised. The staff member offers a simple, unconcerned reply. She explains the monsters were changed last minute, a possibility mentioned in the pamphlet. The warrior realizes he's been tricked by the fine print and tries to back out of the fight. But he's quickly stopped in his tracks. The staff member reminds him that he signed a binding contract and can't just leave. As the warrior sweats in panic, Aslan tells him not to worry, that everything will be fine. The other fighters can only stare, completely baffled by the old dwarf's confidence. Aslan smiles, saying the monsters look like a perfect match and he'll handle both of them himself. The other warriors erupt in fury, screaming that the senile old man will get them all killed. The other fighters decide to use the old man as a decoy to cover their escape. But the colossal beast lunges forward, ready to tear him to pieces in an instant. Aslan simply stands there, calmly declaring that it's time to begin the hunt. From the sidelines, the staff member can only watch, completely surprised by this turn of events. The other warriors are left utterly speechless, unable to comprehend what they're even witnessing. In the blink of an eye, Aslan has defeated both monsters without breaking a sweat. One of the fallen beasts even seems to ask if the other is all right. Aslan, however, is more concerned that defeating both might be a violation of the rules. The horned warrior can only stare, demanding to know what just happened. The horned warrior is completely baffled, certain they were supposed to be running for their lives. He asks if anyone saw what happened, but his companion admits he was too terrified to even look. But a quiet voice speaks up from the ground nearby. A young vampire named Strago explains that she saw the old man take down the monsters. The warriors are stunned to find a vampire hiding there, who apologizes for feeling unwell. The horned warrior impatiently tells her to just explain what she saw. She begins her story, recalling how Aslan suddenly flew into the air using a wind magic stone. The horned warrior is shocked, screaming that such a reckless move gets mages killed every. Reli continues, explaining how he then blinded the troll in a single brutal move, and followed up by using an ice magic stone to completely freeze its feet in place. With the troll off balance, its wild swing was redirected straight into the dragon. The horned warrior asks if they simply took each other out. But Reli explains it was far more calculated than that. She recalls how the dragon bit down on the troll's throat, and how the blinded beast's counterattack went completely wide. That's when Aslan flew in using another magic stone. He threw a small explosive, altering the path of the troll's blade, and forcing it to strike its monstrous companion. The entire complex maneuver was over in a single breathtaking instant, leaving everyone to wonder just who this mysterious old dwarf really is. The horned warrior can't believe the vampire saw everything when they noticed nothing at all. Reli, however, seems completely overwhelmed by all the sudden attention. She explains that she hates the sight of blood and only came because her father forced her to. She just happened to catch a glimpse of the old man's movements, a sight that left her completely shocked. Her father insisted she get used to the violence of the arena, but she finds it impossible to endure. But her explanation is cut short as she suddenly looks up in confusion. She feels a faint tremor, a vibration coming from deep within the earth. Suddenly, the ground erupts as a colossal, toothy maw bursts forth right before Aslan. The other warriors are sent flying by the sheer force of the unexpected attack. But Aslan simply looks on, wondering if he somehow failed to land the finishing blow. Reli panics, terrified of seeing any more bloodshed. But in a blur of motion, she lunges forward and strikes the beast herself. Her mind goes blank, her body moving on pure, desperate instinct. She collapses, realizing her attack wasn't nearly enough to stop it. The young vampire can only whimper that she can't stand to see any more blood. The other warriors are baffled, questioning why a vampire would ever say such a thing. She looks down at her hands, as if she doesn't even remember what just happened. A small piece of the monster falls to the ground. Sometime later in the arena's infirmary, Reli lies in bed, lamenting that she was forced to fight despite her fears. Reli is flustered, thinking everyone must see her as a good person now, just as Aslan greets her, asking if she's finally awake. The horned warrior thanks him for finishing off the beast, while Reli asks if the old man is injured. Aslan admits his chronic back pain has flared up, and he's promptly carried away by the medical staff. The horned warrior then recalls something the arena staff told him. He explains that since Reli landed the final blow, she and Aslan have both advanced to the main tournament. The news sends her into a panic, as she hides under the covers, terrified of seeing more bloodshed. Aslan, however, is impressed by her reaction speed, certain that she possesses incredible talent. Reli tries to back out of the tournament, saying she'll be on her way. But she remembers that this is the first time anyone has ever praised her for her fighting ability. A new resolve forms as she decides to try a little harder, hoping she might even earn her father's approval. She recalls her father's words, something he always used to say. His greatest wish was to see the hero bled, a sight he was denied in his own time. And now, thanking the old man, she vows to overcome her fear and fulfill that very wish herself. With the preliminaries over, the main tournament is set to begin in just a few days. Reli approaches Aslan, surprised at how easily she made it through and wondering if she can push herself even further. The old hero is glad to see she's feeling better, and she thanks him for his encouragement. He smiles, saying there's nothing better than seeing the younger generation full of spirit. With renewed determination, she promises to do her best and finally see the hero's blood. She begins to train on the spot, completely lost in her new goal, much to Aslan's confusion. The old hero watches her go, a sudden thought crossing his mind. Elsewhere, the fish creature peeks over a rooftop, wondering if the others have managed to get any information. But inside, the three of them are kneeling before the champion, their mission having gone completely sideways. Tori can feel the immense pressure, terrified of what's about to happen. The situation reminds Julius of being caught drinking at the military academy, a memory she'd rather forget. Gringer looks down at them, asking their true purpose and noting they're far too weak to be assassins. His intense presence flips a switch in Julius, her warrior instincts taking over completely. Tori realizes that with a man this perceptive, lying would be completely useless. And so he blurts out the truth, that they're searching for the Demon King. The champion's gaze narrows, repeating the title with a flicker of interest. Tori explains that since he's known as the Demon King of the arena, he thought Gringer might be the one they were looking for. Gringer calmly explains that Demon King is just his ring name, and he's not the one they're looking for. The group realizes their entire investigation was a complete dead end, with Tori lamenting his humiliating disguise. Julius teases him, saying she wants to savor his embarrassing outfit a little longer. Gringer is surprised to learn Tori is a boy, offering to introduce him to an acquaintance who runs a similar establishment. The others mock Tori's complete lack of shame, much to his frustration. Tori realizes the tense atmosphere has completely vanished, confirming his earlier instincts were right. Gringer then asks why they're so determined to find the real Demon King. Tori explains that his master, the hero, wants to meet the Demon King one last time as part of his end-of-life preparations. But the mention of the word hero makes Gringer's expression darken with a sudden, intense fury. The entire group is stunned as the friendly atmosphere shatters in an instant. Gringer's face twists into a mask of pure rage, his voice dripping with venom as he repeats the word hero. The sheer pressure of his anger is overwhelming, leaving Tori paralyzed with fear. He can only stare in terror as the champion's fury seems to physically manifest. The young adventurer is so terrified he's certain this is where his journey ends. Gringer's voice is a low growl as he asks if they are truly the hero's companions. Even Julius, a former great general, is completely unnerved by his sudden shift in demeanor. A heavy silence hangs in the air, thick with unspoken menace. But his rage suddenly breaks, and he begins to weep uncontrollably. He cries out that he can finally meet the hero again, leaving everyone completely bewildered by his emotional outburst. The champion is so overcome with emotion that he can barely even speak through his sobs. He apologizes for his outburst, explaining he got carried away when he heard the hero's name. Julius offers her own apology for Tori's behavior, explaining they had to borrow some clothes for him. Tori stammers out an apology, but Gringer simply laughs it off, calling it a precious memory. He explains that an acquaintance was looking for a server for a cross-dressing bar, and he's glad he got to ask. He then formally introduces himself as Ramshackle Gringer, a former companion who once traveled with the hero. Tori turns to Julius, asking if she recognizes the name, but she seems completely lost. She insists she has absolutely no memory of this person at all. Gringer questions if she's truly a companion, recalling that she was always covered in full-body armor. He says that if they've seen his past, they'll understand his true nature, which is hidden in the back room. With a creak, the door slowly swings open. Julius's eyes widen in sudden, shocking recognition. Before them stands a familiar suit of armor, one belonging to the heavy knight of the hero's party. But the room itself is a bizarre shrine, filled with countless portraits of a much younger Aslan. Tori can't believe Julius is ignoring the obvious, questioning why she isn't more concerned about this former companion. She simply covers her face, admitting she's trying her best not to point out the strangeness of it all. Tori points to a particularly revealing portrait, completely baffled by the champion's obsession. But Gringer proudly declares that every piece was a labor of love, painted by his own hand. Tori is horrified by another painting that seems to depict a very close relationship, which Gringer dismisses as a popular art style. Julius has seen enough, certain that even more disturbing things lie deeper within the room. Her mind races, trying to place the memory of the hero's former heavy knight. She remembers the heavy knight as a terrifying warrior who silently crushed demons. And Gringer proudly confirms that he was the one inside that very armor. The revelation leaves Julius completely exhausted by the sheer absurdity of it all. Gringer's gaze grows distant as he yearns to finally meet the hero again. He holds up his collection of paintings, hoping one of them will be the perfect gift. But a voice from the doorway asks what exactly is going on here. Aslan stands there in his dwarf disguise, looking for his companions. A tall, menacing figure in a skull mask appears behind him, noting a familiar scent of blood. He introduces himself as Noseradu Strago, another of the Demon King's great generals, here to thank the hero for looking after his daughter. The imposing general looms over the old man, insisting on offering his gratitude. But the general insists, explaining he just had to find him. He then brings the old hero to a vampire-themed maid cafe to properly express his thanks. A cheerful maid welcomes them, asking what they'd like to order. Strago enthusiastically recommends the special vampire omelet. Aslan can only stare, completely baffled as the general declares the hero is his everything. The old man is completely lost, admitting he thought this thank you was going to be a fight. But Strago explains this is his favorite place, and he's just trying to show his gratitude in his own way. His mind flashes back to his final battle against the Demon King in the throne room. He recalls his duty as a guardian, a role he upheld with his very life. Aslan finally puts the pieces together, remembering that his daughter mentioned him. Strago explains that he was secretly watching from the stands as his daughter competed. He then asks if Aslan was the one who gave her advice back in the infirmary. The question catches Aslan off guard, wondering how the general could have possibly known about their private conversation. He accuses Strago of using a familiar to eavesdrop on them. The general admits it, revealing a small, one-eyed creature he used to watch over his daughter out of concern. He explains that she's been a shut-in for nearly 50 years, and he was worried about how she'd handle the outside world. He even admits to being too harsh on her at first, trying to force her to compete. Aslan is confused, wondering why she's suddenly competing now after all this time. It seems Reli's long isolation has completely warped her sense of time, as she still believes she's only in her 20s. But Strago reveals the sad truth. She's actually in her 70s, and he can only pray she never realizes it. Strago then turns the conversation to Aslan, asking about his own life now that he's a hero. The general mentions his own family, wondering if Aslan has anyone. Aslan admits that he's recently taken on a disciple. Strago leans in, offering to listen to any troubles the old man might have. And Aslan confesses he's not entirely sure how to guide his new student. The general sips his drink, demanding more specific details. Aslan explains that his disciple is often mistaken for a girl, much to the boy's own frustration. But he's also seen the boy secretly putting on makeup late at night with a happy expression. Strago calls him a strange disciple, telling Aslan his answer was far too vague. But their conversation is cut short as Aslan suddenly notices something in the sky above. Strago's monstrous form appears, sensing his daughter is in danger and excusing himself. Aslan can only watch as the general vanishes into a swarm of bats, wondering if he was eavesdropping again. Elsewhere, Reli sings a cheerful song about her new goal, to finally make the hero bleed. She skips through the streets, completely lost in her newfound and rather morbid determination. But from the shadows, another warrior watches her go, identifying her as a fellow contestant. This is Lena Silverfang, a werewolf who believes that with fewer opponents, her chances of winning will only increase. Her bandaged companion agrees, noting that their sister is only a threat during a full moon. Lena decides she doesn't need to win the whole tournament, just secure the prize money by any means necessary. She lunges forward with a predatory grin, suggesting they have a little warm-up match right now. But her attack is met by a sudden swarm of bats, catching her completely by surprise. Strago's monstrous form emerges from the swarm, questioning their intentions with his daughter. Lena can only stare in shock as the bats coalesce into a single, terrifying figure behind her. He begins to tell them a story, a legend about a very particular kind of vampire. One who doesn't need to bite to drink blood, but can manipulate it with a simple gesture. And with a snap of his fingers, he demonstrates that very power. A dark energy is pulled from both Lena and her companion, swirling around the enraged general. Lena lies defeated on the ground, her face splattered with the dark substance. Strago looms over her, noting that despite her looks, her personality is rotten and that she's also in the tournament. He decides he'll enter the tournament as well, taking her place so he can watch over his daughter more closely. Her bandaged companion can only tremble in terror, calling the general a demon. Lena corrects her companion, realizing this isn't a demon but a doting father. Strago seems to ponder this, while his daughter remains cheerfully oblivious. She continues her happy song about making the hero bleed. A morbid goal that leaves her father completely bewildered. Back at the cafe, Aslan is left alone to consider the general's sudden departure. A few days later, the main tournament is finally set to begin. Tori and Julius search the crowd, unable to find any sign of their master. Tori worries that with the Demon King lid being a dead end, Aslan has no reason to even be here. But Julius knows better, realizing the boy still doesn't understand the hero's true nature. She knows that for a battle addict like Aslan, a tournament this big is a challenge he could never resist. She explains that for a warrior like the hero, a good fight is just another part of his end-of-life preparations. The scene then shifts to the massive arena as the Baltrenia fighting tournament officially begins. The announcer introduces the first top contender, Hecatonair, the head mage of the Magic Empire. Next is Brad Bauman, a former knight commander exiled for her extreme cruelty on the battlefield. Then comes the sword saint, Garcia, an orc who wields a legendary blade forged from orichalcum. A lion-headed priest named Father Lyra is also competing, hoping to win the prize money for his orphanage. An even stranger contestant is an old dog named Biga, who somehow won the preliminaries with a single, unbelievable blow. Lena Silverfang is also in the running, though without a full moon. Her true power as a werewolf remains in question. The young vampire Relly Strago looks pale and nervous, clearly at a disadvantage in the daylight. And finally, there's the mysterious old dwarf who dominated his first match, a fighter no one seems to recognize. Tori spots the old dwarf in the lineup, as Julius notes that some of the fighters, particularly Lena, seem quite powerful. The exiled knight commander, Brad Bauman, feels an immense and unbalanced pressure from one of the contestants. Julius's eyes narrow, questioning who this woman could possibly be. The knight commander seems to notice the attention, her expression hardening. Nearby, the vampire General Strago also senses a familiar presence in the arena. He wonders if it's the hero and his daughter, questioning if his own senses have grown dull with age. His daughter, however, is completely overwhelmed by the pressure, certain she'll never win against such powerful opponents. But Aslan calmly tells her to take a deep breath, and she offers a grateful thank you for his kindness. The orc sword saint tries to focus his mind, but seems annoyed by a nearby distraction. And Father Lyra looks on with grim determination, vowing to win this tournament and return to those who are waiting for him. The head mage Hecatonair stands ready, his presence unsettling. Nearby, the old dog Biga can only tremble with fear. The announcer steps forward to finally reveal the tournament bracket. The matchups are set, with the winner earning the right to challenge the champion. Brad Bauman is stunned to learn her first opponent is the hero, who offers a cheerful greeting. The head mage seems to think an elf would be a far less intimidating opponent than the lion priest. As the first match begins, the rules are announced. Victory can be won by knockout, ring-out, or even a fatal blow. The first battle pits the mage Hecatonair against the sword saint, Garcia. The fight begins, and the sword saint immediately draws his blade. He focuses his mind, preparing for the battle ahead. Hecatonair taunts the sword saint, inviting him to make the first move. She condescendingly offers him a free shot, calling him small fry. Garcia's calm expression begins to crack under the insults, and his patience finally shatters into a mask of pure rage. He rises to his feet, agreeing to grant her wish. The sword saint unleashes a devastating technique, warning her not to regret this. A single swing delivers 100 cuts in an instant, a secret art of the orc style. But Hecatonair simply smiles, completely unfazed by the assault. The sword saint can only look on in disbelief. She mockingly asks if he can't even break her simple, low-level barrier. The sword saint can't believe his orichalcum blade didn't even leave a scratch. Hecatonair continues her condescending taunts, calling him nothing more than small fry. The insult strikes a nerve, twisting his face into a mask of pure rage. He unleashes another furious barrage, his pride completely shattered by her words. But when the dust settles, he's left panting and exhausted, while she asks if he's already finished. The head mage stands completely unharmed, looking down on her defeated opponent. She explains that her country has placed a restriction on her magic, limiting its power based on her opponent's strength. And because he is so incredibly weak, she can only use the most basic, low-level spells against him. She laments that no matter how hard she tries to provoke him, this pathetic display is all he's capable of. But as she speaks, the sword saint senses a dark, overwhelming power radiating from her very being. She raises a single finger, preparing a simple Class 1 spell, and unleashes an invisible arrow that pierces the sword saint in an instant. Garcia collapses from the shock, and Hecatonair is declared the winner. She simply sighs, stepping over her defeated opponent without a second glance. From the stands, the dragonoid warrior remarks that he was just small fry anyway. Aslan notes her difficult personality, wondering if she understands the concept of a hero. With the first match over, the announcer introduces the next fighter, Father Lira. His opponent is the old dog Biga, who somehow won his preliminary match. The lion priest's gaze hardens as the second battle is about to begin. But a strange woman approaches, asking if he's feeling nervous. He admits to Hecatonair that this is his first time in a tournament like this. He explains that his orphanage is short on funds, and he has no other choice but to fight for the prize money. He apologizes for sharing such a personal story with his opponent, but she seems flustered. To his surprise, the head mage suddenly begins to cry. She doesn't even understand why she's weeping, completely overcome with emotion. Strago remarks that she must be moved by his story, and she realizes she misunderstood his intentions. Through tears, she promises to donate half of her winnings to his orphanage if she wins. She explains that she's unemployed and needs to give the other half to her parents, much to Strago's annoyance. Father Lira is touched by her kindness, agreeing they should both give the fight their all. And with that, the lion priest walks down the corridor, ready to enter the arena. Aslan notes that Hecatonair is a formidable opponent, one he might have to face in the finals. He can see it in her eyes, the look of someone who has known the battlefield. A feeling he recognizes all too well. The second match is then announced, Father Lira versus the old dog Biga. The small creature trembles in the center of the arena, looking completely harmless. Father Lira's gaze is steady, his expression unreadable. He wonders why an ordinary dog would even be here, questioning if it truly wants to fight. The priest finds himself unable to bring himself to attack such a small animal. Instead, he opens his arms wide, gently calling for the dog to come to him. The small creature looks up, a strange glint in its eye as it responds to his kindness. The small dog happily approaches, and the priest calls it a good boy. Father Lira gently picks up the small creature. He decides to simply carry it out of the ring, ending the match peacefully. But a flicker of unease crosses his face as he prepares to set it down. He carefully lowers the small animal back to the ground. But the creature's grip suddenly tightens around his hand. Its peaceful expression remains, betraying nothing of its true nature. And in an instant, it bites down with a vicious snap. The dog's form twists into a grotesque monster, mocking the priest for his carelessness. Lira can only stare back in pure, unadulterated shock. The priest stumbles back, completely stunned by the sudden transformation. But the creature simply reverts to its harmless form, trotting away innocently. Lira questions if what he just saw was nothing more than a hallucination. The small dog just looks back with a placid, unassuming smile. But his instincts scream otherwise, every cell in his body recognizing the immense threat. He channels his power, preparing to unleash a sacred technique of his own. A brilliant flash of light erupts from his body, a holy power made manifest. From the stands, Julius and the others can't believe he'd use such a powerful move on a single dog. The entire arena is engulfed by the sheer force of his attack. With a furious roar, he unleashes everything he has against this deceptive foe. The attack manifests as a colossal beast of pure light, but the small dog stands before it, completely unfazed. The holy energy seems to be absorbed, as Biga lets out a single, unassuming bark. And in an instant, the priest's ultimate attack is completely devoured. Lira can only stare in utter disbelief, his spirit broken. The residual power of his own attack swirls around him, now completely out of his control. A dark splatter hits the ground as the priest's body gives out. From the stands, Tori and Julius can only watch in stunned silence. Father Lira lies defeated on the arena floor, his opponent looking on innocently. The announcer declares Biga the winner, as the lion priest has completely lost consciousness. The small creature simply trots away, its work now done. From the stands, the other fighters can't believe what they just witnessed. But Aslan feels a strange sense of familiarity, certain he's seen this dog somewhere before. Tori turns to Julius, noticing she's trembling with a sudden, overwhelming fear. Her eyes are wide with a horrified recognition, a memory she thought long buried. Elsewhere, a woman asks the small dog why it's here, and it explains it's also searching for the Demon King. The creature reveals it's here to collect on a debt owed by the arena's master. The woman seems to understand, though she's clearly not happy about it. She then notices Aslan in the crowd, wondering if this tournament is some kind of reunion. A monstrous voice then echoes, offering to reveal the hero's location to anyone who wishes him dead. Hecatonair notes that the hero seems to have a lot of enemies, a fact she seems to have just realized. She kneels over the fallen priest, vowing to fight on his behalf and secure the prize money for him. Lyra can only apologize, his thoughts still lingering on the terrifying power of that small dog. A caption reveals the creature's true identity, Biga, the beloved pet of the Demon King himself. Aslan realizes it's finally his turn for the second match, a little disappointed he never got to pet the dog. Back at the cafe, Strago explains that he, like Julius, was once one of the Demon King's 6 great generals. Aslan considers telling him about Julius, wondering if he should pass on a message. But Strago leans in with a menacing grin, asking why Aslan would be so eager to help him find her. The general's strange demeanor leaves Aslan completely baffled, unable to grasp his true intentions. Strago then changes the subject, asking if the old hero has a family or a partner of his own. Aslan nervously explains that at his age, he doesn't have anyone like that. Strago's tone darkens, saying he'll be sure to tell Julius, leaving Aslan completely confused. A horrifying realization dawns on the old hero as Strago confirms his suspicions. The general furiously accuses him of being a stalker, declaring that he's completely finished. Meanwhile, Julius laments her difficult life, now being stalked by a pervert from the tavern. Back in the arena, the announcer introduces the next fighter, a mysterious old man. Aslan steps into the ring, regretting the ridiculous fake name he used to register. His opponent is announced as Lena Silverfang, leader of the Silver Wolf Thieves. From the stands, Tori and the others watch with concern as the match begins. Lena knows that under normal circumstances, the hero would have an overwhelming advantage. Tori is amazed by the roar of the crowd, while Julius looks on. But the cheers quickly turn to jeers, with the crowd screaming for the fighters to lose. They're furious at the old dwarf's ridiculous fake name, telling him to get out of the ring. And they're just as hostile towards his opponent, calling the criminal Lena out by name. From the stands, Tori and the others are stunned by the sheer amount of hate being thrown at the fighters. Aslan notes that the audience seems to have a real problem with his opponent, who can only agree. He tells the disguised Strago to ignore the crowd, reminding him that they should focus on their own battle. The vampire general considers his options, his expression unreadable. He reminds himself that he only entered this tournament to watch over his daughter, and has no reason to fight the hero seriously. He decides to just put on a decent show and then throw the match, as his daughter Relly waves to Aslan from the stands. Relly offers a heartfelt thank you, cheering him on with all her might. But in the ring, Strago's disguise can't hide Lena's cold expression. Her face twists with jealousy, furious that the old man is getting all the attention. Aslan senses her killing intent rising as she vows to destroy him. With the announcer's call, the battle officially begins. Lena moves in a blur, unleashing a lightning-fast attack. Aslan's eyes widen, caught completely off guard by her speed. He finds himself suddenly bound, admitting she's impressively quick. But Lena only scoffs, questioning if he truly considers this fast. She appears behind him with a condescending smile, disappointed by how rusty he seems. He realizes he's only seeing afterimages, unable to track her movements. He can't even follow her with his eyes, a feat that would normally be effortless. The dizzying speed makes him feel sick, a harsh reminder of his own age. With no other choice, he creates a small diversion on the ground. A move Lena immediately dismisses as a petty smokescreen. Aslan realizes his opponent is far stronger than he anticipated and wonders what tools he can use to even the odds. His gaze hardens, his mind racing to find a new strategy. The two fighters stand in a tense standoff, the battle far from over. From the stands, Tori can only scream his master's name in a panic.